Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Council of the City and County of Swansea. It's our budget meeting, as you're all aware. First item on our agenda this evening is apologies for absence. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I have apologies from Councillors June Burtonshaw, Jan Curtis, Steve Gallagher, Linda James, Peter Jones, Miles Langston, Jen Rayner, Gareth Sullivan and Will Thomas.
Are there any other apologies? Well, if you had them, please.
David Halliwell and Steve Gallagher.
Did you get that?
Sorry, Linda, I missed. Who did you say?
David Halliwell.
All right, okay.
And
Thanks.
Steve Gallagher.
And I can see that Will Thomas is here. I have his apologies. I'll put that right.
Yep. Present, thank you.
Okay, good. Right, thank you. Item 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Are there any to declare? Tracy?
Thank you, Presiding Member. There are 2 items that I would draw your attention to tonight. Agenda item 8 is the pay policy statement. So even though this is a high-level statutory report, it does contain information relating to officer pay. And I know a number of councillors do have close personal associates and family members who work for the authority. So I would advise that those councillors declare a personal interest under paragraph 10(2)(c) of the code. I'll take a block declaration as to a personal interest for agenda item 8. Officers who are present will need to declare a personal and prejudicial interest and leave the remote meeting. Save that Adrian, Chard and Hugh Evans will remain in the room, A, to answer technical questions and 14 to take the minute of the meeting. Then in relation to agenda item 10, which is the revenue budget report, if you are a member of the Port Health Authority or the Fire Authority, or indeed the CJC, which is also referenced, that will be a personal interest, and again I'll take a block declaration. So I'll just go back to agenda item 8, the pay policy. So I'll take a block declaration, please, for any councillor who has a close personal associate or a family member who works for the authority. Can you please raise either your physical hand or your virtual hand to declare an interest? Personal only. We're just taking a note of those hands that are going up. And can I remind all councillors to fill in the declaration sheet, please, which was circulated. I'll take a block declaration, for all officers who are present. That will be a personal and prejudicial interest. So again, you raise your virtual hand or put your physical hand up. Thank you, and we will be leaving the room when that item is discussed. Okay. Yeah. And then finally, agenda item 10, which is the revenue budget. So those councillors who are members of the Port Health Authority, the Fire Authority or the CJC, again, can you please raise either your hand or your virtual hand?
It's already there.
Thank you, Councillor Hepburn.
And please remember to fill in the form, please.
Thank you. Are there any other interests to be declared?
We've got a few hands remaining. Councillor Hennigan.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. Item 12.13. I have a secure tenancy with the City and County of Swansea, and I hope it remains that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And Councillor Mike Lewis. Mike.
Sorry, Chair. That was my hand from Legacy hand. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Right. All other hands? No? Okay, thank you. Somebody's got hiccups. Okay, item 3, minutes. To approve and sign the minutes of the previous meetings as correct record, pages 1 to 14. Page 1, 2 and 3. And then into the minutes of council held on Thursday the 27th of January, page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and overly 14. No one raising their hands. Can we accept those as a correct record?
I move. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Item 4 is written responses to questions asked at the last ordinary meeting of council, and there were none. And then item 5 is announcements of the presiding member. And my announcements this evening is very short, you'd be pleased to hear. No announcements as such, but there are corrections, amendments to the council summons. And the amendment is item 8, the pay policy statement 2022-23. And that is the Strategic Human Resources and Organisation Development Manager has advised that the Salbry Pay Agreement 2021 and the National Joint Council Pay Agreement 2021/2022 have both been agreed since drafting the report. Therefore, he will amend the report's recommendations to reflect this. Therefore, the recommendation will read the amended pay policy statement 2021-22, which included the Salbry Pay Agreement 21 and the National Joint Council Pay Agreement 2021-22 be approved. Okay, that's item 8. And then the urgent item, which is the notice of motion, solidarity with Ukraine, and pursuant to paragraph 100B and section 4B of the Local Government Act 1972, I consider that the notice of motion titled Solidarity with the Ukraine should be considered at the meeting as a matter of urgency. Right, the reason for the urgency is given that Russia launched the full-scale military invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022, and this is the only opportunity for this council to consider and debate the motion. That's my reasons for agreeing that this is a matter of urgency. Okay, that's the notice of motion, which we will come to in due course. Next item on our agenda is item 6, and it's the leaders' announcements. Councillor Rob Stewart. Rob.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'll begin with the Ukrainian crisis, and I'm sure members will join me, and I know we'll be debating the motion later, in utterly condemning the action taken by Vladimir Putin to attack the people of Ukraine. Like a number of cities and locations across the UK, we are looking to help our colleagues and friends in Ukraine. I know there's a number of charities and organisations already working to support the people of Ukraine and those displaced from their homes and seeking refuge in other countries. I hope later this afternoon we'll obviously remake and restate that commitment to help those in need. But I just wanted to update Council on a couple of actions that we're specifically taking. The Council may or may not be aware that we do already have quite strong links with the city of Rivne in Ukraine, and we've worked with that location as far back as the 1990s, where we were involved in helping them with their social services and housing, and obviously we've got ties and links there, but and which is where we'll continue to try and offer help and support. I attended meetings earlier this week with the Welsh Government and the WLGA, looking at how local government across Wales can coordinate their responses. And again, we're struck by the generosity of the people of Wales and the people of Swansea in terms of how they're responding. But I would ask, along with other leaders across Wales, that if people are looking to help, they focus their efforts on provision of medicines, but primarily cash donations. And there will be advice coming out in terms of registered charities that people can donate to, because those are the best ways of helping at the present time. There has already been an overwhelming response in terms of goods and clothes and others, but of course they aren't at this point in time required, and they are taking up a huge amount of storage space as we prepare to distribute those out to Ukraine. So if people are looking to help, cash donations via the registered charities are the best ways to help at this point in time. I also want to pay tribute to Councillor Clive Lloyd and Jeff Dong, the Pension Committee. I know that they've also taken some swift action to look at what we can do to reduce our investments with Russian entities. I know that Councillor Lloyd has already issued a statement on behalf of the Wales Pension Partnership and the local government pension scheme, and I'll just refer that statement for the time being, which is that we are deeply saddened by the situation in Ukraine, and our thoughts are with the Ukrainian people. Our total exposure to Russian investments is minimal at less than 1%. Even so, in light of the terrible events we have witnessed and the economic sanctions imposed internationally, as a collective, we have decided to divest from these holdings as soon as practically possible. Given the circumstances, we do not believe that engagement with these companies presents a viable option. So I again pay tribute to what Clive has done as chair and what Jeff and the officers have done to advise. And again, we will be seeking to move out of those investments as quickly and as lawfully as possible. And it's just a raft of actions we're taking behind the scenes to support the national efforts to try and isolate the regime in Russia, to bring pressure on the hope that they will stand back from this unlawful and abhorrent action against the people of Ukraine. Chair, on to more pleasant items, and I was very pleased this morning to attend an event in Parc y Scarlets where we were able to celebrate the delivery of the Swansea Bay City deal. It's been nearly 5 years since we attended the signing of that historic deal in the Liberty Stadium along with the Prime Minister and First Minister. I'm pleased to report that we currently have allocated £1.296 billion worth of that £1.3 billion deal. All 9 of our projects and programmes are now in delivery mode, which means that they are now delivering the outcomes that we had anticipated some 5 years ago. We are the only deal in Wales to have allocated 99% of our available funds. We're the only deal in Wales to have all of our projects approved and in delivery, and I think we should be very proud as a region in terms of what we have been able to achieve despite the challenges of both Brexit transition and the COVID pandemic. I want to pay tribute again, as I did this morning, to all of the project teams across the region, to the central office and to everybody that's been involved in delivery of the deal. We should be rightly proud. And of course, looking at the current challenges that we see before us, delivery of projects like the Homes as Power Stations project, like the decarbonisation project, will help families dealing with the cost of living crisis, with the energy crisis that we have before us, whilst other projects like the digital infrastructure project will again give us the best networks anywhere in the UK. And again, we've all had to adapt, haven't we, to different ways of working over the last few years. And as I said this morning, the world has changed forever. And I think, you know, one of the major selling points we have as a region is that if you can choose to run your business or to work from anywhere in the world, why would you choose anywhere but here? Because we have a beautiful natural environment, we have a wonderful place in which to live, and it, you know, with the best networks and with the best support, we can attract significant investment to this region. Of course, as part of that, Chair, we also had the pleasure, after the commemorative event down at the Parc y Scarlets, to then return to Copper Bay for the formal opening of the arena. And I think I know a number of members were there today. Sorry, can I ask everybody to remain on mute, please? I'm getting quite a lot of feedback there. Apologies. Yeah, we were I think everybody who attended couldn't be but impressed with the facility that's being created there. It definitely has the wow factor, and you know, I was very pleased to thank those that have helped deliver this, and I just want to repeat some of the thanks specifically to the officers today on that. I was able to present Lee Richards with a hamper, and Lee has been the heads up project manager for the Copper Bay delivery, and really has, you know, done an outstanding job through real adversity, because remember, all of the Copper Bay development was delivered during the pandemic, and it's a huge achievement for us to be on time and on budget opening that arena. I also want to pay tribute to Martin Nichols, Phil Roberts, Hugh Mowbray for their continued support. Lee, Greg, Nick, Chris and Andy, our fantastic comms team, who've done an amazing job continually helping us to get our progress over to the public. Our events team, who I didn't mention today, unfortunately, at the arena, I should have, because Fran Tracy and David Price-Deer have done an amazing job, especially as David Price-Deer has become a maestro in programming our new 92,000 light digital skin. So he's done an amazing job. And of course, we can't forget our highways teams and lighting teams have all worked to support the delivery. I think what we have in Copper Bay is a fantastic £135 million delivery, part of that £1 billion story of investment going into the city and county of Swansea, and it will place us in the best possible position to be a brilliant city as we emerge from COVID. And finally, Chair, if you will, on this item, can I just also thank my political colleagues? I did thank them today in person, but I've got to say I've been blessed as leader to have a wonderful team of people around me who are supportive every day, and I could not do the job I do without the people around me, so thank you all very much. I can see a couple of hands have gone up, Chair, so I will pause there. I'm more than happy to.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Can I just go off script for a moment, and on behalf of the council, thank you for your efforts. I think you said people have visions, but not everyone can see those visions through to completion and delivery. And you have delivered for Swansea on this occasion, likewise in so many other times. So on behalf of the council, thank you very much for all the effort you've put into it. It's a brilliant achievement. Well done. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Lyndon Jones. Lyndon.
Thanks, presiding member. Can I support the thanks to all the officer team in Swansea that Rob just mentioned? Really fantastic. We've got a fantastic facility in Swansea, and it really will attract a lot of people and business, so that is really good news. So and to Rob himself, so well done. I was delighted, to be there this afternoon. I thought it was marvellous. I have to tell you, though, I was thrilled to see the stairs, because when I went there about 6 months ago, we were on the roof and I had to take a ladder to get back down to ground level. So absolutely delighted, but no, really well done to the team of officers, because everybody had to be impressed with what we saw this afternoon.
Thank you, Lyndon.
Chris.
Hello?
Yeah,
we can hear you, Chris. Go ahead.
Oh, right. Just to say congratulations to everybody involved. It can't but fail to be impressed. It is truly awe-inspiring when the light skin is on outside, and just good luck and well done to everybody involved.
thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Lyndon. Appreciate both of your comments, and I'm sure the officers will as well. Chair, if I go on to the remainder of my announcements, I also wanted to reference the historic point we've got to as well with the long-running saga on the skate park. Members will know, and I was grateful to members across the chamber for their support in terms of the difficulties that we encountered in recent months with politically being able to charge our functions and to do what we're here to do as politicians. But I'm very, very pleased to say that the skate park was approved, of course, by Cabinet on the 18th of November, and we agreed to enter into a lease with Mumbles Community Council for the replacement and construction of the new skate park in Mumbles. It was not known at the time whether that would be subject to a further judicial review, but I'm pleased to say that no judicial review proceedings have been received by the authority in relation to the Cabinet decision, and the deadline for issuing any proceedings has now passed. I'm therefore very pleased to confirm that the legal advisors of both Council and Mumbles Community Council are prioritising the lease and have completed that work this week, which is really good news. And I know now that Mumbles Community Council and their partners will be working to deliver that fantastic facility on the seafront as soon as possible, and my congratulations go out to all of them. I also wanted to make a statement, because I've been asked many questions about where we are with the home farm considerations. I wanted to say, just remind members that we have been working as a council. Home farm has been a working council industrial compound for many years. However, it also contains a number of historic buildings that we want to protect and restore when the council vacates the compound. I want to confirm and reiterate that we will continue to do all we can to restore our heritage, and we will be ensuring that we work towards a solution that allows the home farm buildings, the historic buildings, to find a new use and to be reintegrated and linked better with the surrounding park area. It's also really important that we link what we do in Home Farm and Singleton Park with the wider enhancements of our beautiful promenade and bay. Therefore, no work on the Home Farm heritage restoration will take place until a new bay strategy can be brought forward and agreed. That will mean that we will continue to work to develop the home farm buildings, to restore them so that our heritage is something within that area that we will once again be proud of. Moving on, Chair, to the Fair Pledge campaign. The Fair Pledge campaign, for members who are not aware, the WLGA, which means all 22 leaders across Wales, have agreed to sign up to the Fair campaign pledge and to ask all councillors and candidates to do the same and sign up and commit to a fair and respectful election campaign for the local government elections in May. Unfortunately, councillors and candidates across Wales are often subject to intimidation, personal attacks, threats and abuse, which is not only unacceptable but undermines the principles of free speech and debate. Politics should focus on facts and respectful debate about differences of policy or priorities, not insults or intolerances, misinformation or misogyny, discrimination or division. Both myself and I'm grateful to all the group leaders in council who have agreed to sign up to the pledge. We have pledged to treat everyone with courtesy, kindness and respect. And as leaders, we stand together to call for an end to abuse, intimidation and harassment of any kind. We pledge to participate in the fair election campaign, which is based on positive campaigning and merit rather than personal attacks and smears against individuals. We encourage all elected members and, importantly, all candidates in the forthcoming election to do the same. In addition, we will be publicly calling out any such inappropriate behaviour and will take a zero tolerance approach to abuse of any candidate or any councillor. We have the right to carry out our civic duties without fear of being attacked or abused. A copy of the pledge will be circulated to all councillors who will be restanding for election and also to all candidates so that they are aware of the pledge and the standards of behaviours expected of them when campaigning for elections. So I hope all members, I know all members in the chamber will be more than happy to sign up to that, but I do hope that all of the candidates who will be putting themselves forward for election will also take the opportunity to sign up and to live by the priorities and the pledges that we will be putting forward. Thank you, Chair. Those are my announcements for today.
Thank you, Leah. Well, it's not usually a question and answer session. Mike, can you quickly then?
Yeah, it's not a question. Just like to say that on behalf of the residents and users of Singleton Park, we welcome the statement by the leader and look forward to working with him and others on how we might be able to bring those buildings back into beneficial use and retain the historical heritage that we have there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 7 then on the agenda, it comes on to public questions where we set aside 10 minutes for questions that relate to items on the agenda today. The first question is relates to agenda item 11, the capital budget and programme 2021-22 through to 2026-27, and I'd like to call on Martin O'Neill. Martin, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. So my question is, in view of the much needed and greatly appreciated improvements to facilities which are currently underway at Underhill Park, would Swansea Council make a commitment to working with Mumbles Community Council and any other potential funders to identify and assist with funding for the construction of the proposed all-weather pitch? Thank you, that's my question.
Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Yes, absolutely, and I'm very happy to give a commitment to work with Mumbles Community Council, which is a very forward-thinking council. In terms of the all-weather pitch, just to relay, we have had conversations with those involved in that delivery, and I have given a commitment, which I think has been reported publicly as well, where we would invite them to submit a bid for support to assist with financially delivering that scheme. It is something that, as you know, I was keen to do some years ago, but given the change in the Swans Premiership position, we lost access to funding that we otherwise hoped to attract. But I have had conversations, and Mr. O'Neill, yes, absolutely, would welcome a conversation with you about how best we can help with the delivery of the Underhill scheme.
Thank you, Leader. Okay. And again, question 2 relates to the same item, capital budget programme 2021-22 through to 26-27, and this is Dylan Williams. Dylan, please.
Well, good evening. Would the leader or cabinet member confirm if there are plans for investment in public toilets, and will this include investment in Clydach public toilets?
Thank you, Dylan. Leader.
Chair, I'll hand this one to Councillor Thomas.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, I'd be happy to respond, Chair. Yeah, that's already underway. I mean, currently in this financial year, we have committed an extra £180,000 actually to refurbish all of our toilet stock that's maintained and cleaned by our cleansing service. So that's 30 in total. We're about 2/3 of the way. I think we've either completed or about to have completed 20 of them. That leaves 10 more to do, which includes Clydach, by the way. So that will be completed. I haven't got timescales for all of them yet, but in the coming months, those will all be done. So all of our toilet stock that is looked after, as I said, and by cleansing, will have been completed. If more money is needed to complete that, we have a commitment that we will add to that £180,000 to make sure that refurbishment programme is completed. And in addition to that, we've also committed a further £80,000 per annum to the cleansing department to continue to maintain our toilets. So that's on top of the existing budgets, on top of that, an extra £80,000 a year to help, keep them at the standard that we want to maintain them at. So yes, on both counts is the answer to the question.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, item 8 then is the pay policy statement 2022-23. Ask officers to leave, who need to leave, please. Okay, that's on your agenda from pages 15 to 44. And Councillor David Hopkins. I think, David, you're going to present the report.
Just before we start, yes. Chair, I'm aware that a number of councillors joined the meeting a little bit late. This item was subject to a block declaration. So just reminding, if any of those councillors who arrived late need to make a declaration, they need to do so now. Nobody? Okay, then we'll carry on. Apologies, Councillor Hopkins.
Okay, David.
Thanks, Presiding Member. To be honest, this is an annual report that comes before us, obviously every year. It's at a time where we have been in negotiations with the trade union. I'm very pleased to say that part of today's report, and I know the leader will be making some reference to the minimum wage, and particularly going to £10 an hour. So I've got nothing to add to the report. I know that Adrian Chard is here to present it in his normal fashion, so I'm more than happy to hand over to Adrian Chard.
Thank you, David.
Apologies, President Member, could I come in? I've got an interest in this one, and my connection's struggling, and I did try and put my hand up.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as Councillor Hopkins stated, there's a requirement to produce and present the pay policy to the council on an annual basis. So the pay policy is for 2022-23. The document contains the pay award that was agreed prior to publication of the policy for the chief executive and chief officers. It also includes reference to the arrangement for the minimum wage rate of £10 per hour for our lower paid workers, and also includes reference to the pensions discretions policy, which was updated and agreed by CNT in autumn 2021, as well as the provisions for exit payments that we were required to provide under legislation. As was mentioned at the start of the meeting, subsequent to the policy being developed, the Salbry Pay Award, with effect from the 1st of September 2021, has been agreed, as is the NJC Pay Award, effective from the 1st of April 2021, has been agreed. So approval is sought for the pay policy to subsequently include the amended pay rates in respect of those two particular pay awards.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Are there any questions? No? If not, who's going to move? Leader, move? Yes. Yes, Leader, moved. And seconded by?
Sorry, Councillor Hopkins is going to move, I believe, Chair, sorry.
Right. David, you can move.
Yeah, President Member, I'm more than happy to move the recommendations, and I know, as I say, that there is a reference there to £10 an hour. What I would like to say on that, right, this is something we've been trying to fix for some time. I would like to thank the leader for his leadership on this, and the way that he's taken this, the way he's driven us to this one is unbelievable. I think we're going to be amongst the first in Wales to go to the £10 an hour. And I know it's been very welcome with our trade union colleagues. And with everything else that's going on in at the present time with inflation and everything else and fuel bills, I think it's never come at a better time. So more than happy to move, and I know that Councillor Rob Seymour wanted to lead and wanted to do second.
Thank you, David. Seconded by Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could just quickly second and thank again David for his work on this. Look forward to saying a bit more about the £10 an hour as we come to the budget.
Okay, thank you. Okay, see the recommendation on page 15. Mr. Evans, take the vote, please.
Thank you, everybody. The vote has been launched. Oh, hang on. Yeah, all right. Can you? Yeah, that's okay. Is everyone okay? Is everyone able to vote? Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Penny Matthews.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Sorry, I'm having a slight technical problem here. Councillor Beverly Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Cyril Anderson.
For.
Councillor Will Evans, I've done well, sorry. Councillor Graham Thomas.
For.
If you could lower your hands once you voted, it will help. Sorry. Councillor Mike Lewis.
For.
thing. So just for counting, was there anybody against or anybody abstaining? Yeah, that was a unanimous one. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you.
Let me just call everybody back in. 1 second. Okay, just call the other officers back in as well. Thank you before we move on to the next item.
I'll excuse myself now from the meeting if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's everybody. Chair.
Okay, so we move on to the budget reports. Can I remind you, although I'm sure not many of you need reminding of the way we run things. The Section 151 Officer Ben Smith will give an overall technical presentation. Ben will speak specifically to each item, and then we call on councillors to ask technical questions of Ben. There will be an opportunity to ask specific questions on each item. Then we will call the leader of the council to give the budget presentation. Okay, this will cover a few agenda items combined, and then we'll extend that time to allow under the Constitution. And then after this deal, each report will be dealt with individually. Okay, so as we've done it over the years. Technical questions of the Section 151 officer, then political questions of the leader after he gives his political presentation. Okay, item 9 then is the medium-term financial planning 2023-24 to the years 2025-26. Mr. Smith, please, Section 151.
Thank you, presiding member, and as you've indicated, I'm going to, with your indulgence, give a technical overview of all the reports as a whole. I am, with your indulgence, going to be slightly longer-winded on my preamble, but the prize will be that I will reduce myself down to little to say on the individual reports, because I think this is a year where the overall strategic narrative weave is perhaps more important than some of the technical detail, but obviously I will be on standby to answer questions if they're asked. So here we are a couple of years on, still learning to live with the pandemic, and we're probably more now starting to deal with some of the significant economic convulsions that are beginning to affect us, and you'll have more on that later in the member questions. I'm going to repeat part of what I said to both Cabinet and Scrutiny, which is for the last couple of years, the budgets have been somewhat held together with Velcro, given there have been very, very substantial swings in the budgets and much flexing of capital and revenue budgets. I said this year is very much a visit to the full-on visit to the fuzzy felt factory. And the reason I use that analogy is we've had announcement after announcement after announcement, and I don't think I've quite seen so many announcements at UK or Welsh government level around changes to the current year, reopening the settlements. There's going to be a reopening of the 22-23 settlement. And so there's quite a lot going on, mixing all of the years up in a bit of a jumble. And I'm going to sound a bit Oliver Twistian about it, aren't I, moaning that and I don't know where to put all this money, but it's important in the grand scheme of things because I think it will all interlock, and perhaps the one report that isn't here, and I think the leader will make reference to in his presentation, is the in-year monitoring. We've had very substantial underspends for several years, and that's likely to continue, which will give you an awful lot of firepower in terms of making some key policy decisions today on the budget. Before I go into the main preamble, I did warn you it's going to be a long preamble. I must as ever pay tribute to the finance staff who've worked tirelessly throughout responding to those various national announcements. and I couldn't do my job without their continued support. So I am incredibly grateful, and I know members have repeatedly acknowledged that, and I'm grateful for that too. So moving on to the next bit of the preamble, as you know, I'm known to mix a metaphor or two to try and make the budget papers a little bit more interesting than usual. I'm going to go on to very dangerous ground this year. I'm going to attempt to reference football, and perhaps even more dangerously, the ball with pointy edges to it, and I realise that probably everyone in the chamber knows an awful lot more about that than I do, but nonetheless, here goes in terms of the overall position. Look, we've had a good couple of seasons or three, and we've had some great results in terms of the level of reserves that have been added to, record-breaking underspends, and that's going to be added to this year, and that gives you an awful lot of flexibility with what you're going to be considering in terms of the budgets for the coming year, but also the future years. But we've got a whole raft of things coming up, and it's not just about this season or next year's matches, but it's next two, because we already know our settlement for the next 2 years, in the sense that we have a 3-year deal. And those coffers being flushed, I mean, we've got quite a lot of money in the transfer market to be able to decide what to do. So it does give you an awful lot of flexibility, but equally, I've got to be realistic. Let's be honest. At a nominal level, the sums are absolutely phenomenal for the budget that you're going to have in front of you and the discussion you're going to have today. But at a real level, they're a little bit more surreal given the scale of inflation that is about and the front loading of the settlement. But hey, I'd still rather have money than not have money. And at the time at which I wrote the reports, there are references to all the usual risks of financial and political and geopolitical, and clearly elsewhere on the agenda today, there are darker matters than the budget to attend to. So I will use this preamble to try and give you an overall feel of what you're deciding to take and do today. The rules of football are normally littered with what the strategy should be in terms of 4-4-2, 4-3-3 and all the other bits and pieces. The pointy ball sport is much more straightforward in terms of the rules are codified as to how many players and where they kind of are on the pitch. And the reason I'm emphasising that is for this neck of the woods in terms of union, the full 15 matter on the pitch and for the long term. And the reason I'm emphasising that is I'm going to refer to a couple of big strategic bits in the report, which I think will get you to the heart and the nub of the interlocking nature. Your normal medium-term financial planning assumptions are that council tax rises by up to 5% in a normal year. It's a planning assumption. 3 years of 5 is 15 if I do my basic maths. You've got inflation, unfortunately, which every time I look at it is just going up and up and up. And you've probably got inflation now going to hit 8%, then 4, then 3. Do the maths on that. That's about 15% over the years as well. And then you go to the settlement, which is worth more than 9%. It's the most we've ever had as a settlement since Swansea's been in its current form. But then it does drop to 3 point something and 2 point something. And again, if you do the quick maths, that also comes to the full 15 yet again. So to some extent, you're going to have a whole raft of debates and discussions about how much you've got now, how much you've got for next year, but knowing what's coming in future years. And I will come back to some of those specifically, particularly around item 10 on the revenue budget in due course. And the bulk of it is going to be about the full 15 and the general fund. But equally, we've got a couple of important items on in terms of the HRA. And again, in this neck of the woods, the HRA is perhaps a little bit more niche. It's as passionate as it is for the general fund for those that are affected by it. Probably not subject to the full 15 because you're going to see a very similar set of proposals, similar looking game, but it's perhaps a bit more like rugby league. In terms of the caps and the amount of increase in rent that you can put in, and there isn't that large 9% injection of money in the first place. So in terms of the overall position, as I say, I will come back to some specifics in due course, and one I will have to raise on item 10, going back to my Velcro and fuzzy felt analogy, is there is a modest update to give you on the final settlement. You'll see it in due course. As I say, the big strategic strokes for £500 million worth of spend are really, really simple. But the bit I've got to do is equally make it work to the pound and ultimately make it work to the pence when it comes to council tax. So I hope you don't mind me indulging my attempt at a metaphor this time. You're in charge on the field, presiding member as the referee. I'll leave it to the players to sort it all out for the rest of the evening, and I hope to only be reduced to the TMO for the individual reports when they come in due course. So I will bow out at that point and hand over to the leader.
Thank you, Ben. Leader?
Well, thank you, Chair. I don't know how you follow that, really, to be honest with you, but I'll try. Thank you. Firstly, thank you, of course, to Mr. Smith and his team. As always, done an amazing job in really challenging times, because as Mr. Smith said, it's great that we've got lots of funding heading our way, but the continuous changes, amendments, additions and movements have made it a really challenging period to pull the budget together. If Mr. Evans could give me access to share my screen, I will try and do it now.
I'm hoping you've got it, Leader. It is a slight technical problem on my side, but I'm hoping it will work for you.
Great. Okay, let's try it and let's see if it works.
Yes. We can see that. Thank you, Leader.
There we go. That's the full presentation come up, yeah? Okay, thank you, colleagues. Well, I'll rattle through, and this presentation will cover all of the reports that we have as part of the budget this year, as we normally do. So, first of all, just for our Conservative colleagues, a little bit of fun. I just want to remind them this is a work event, so no cheese and wine this evening, please, just to be clear. So, you know, as long as we're all on the same page. But being more serious, again, this is, as Mr. Smith said, a really, really positive budget. It is a front-loaded budget, and in any measure, this is the largest ever investment in services the Swansea Council has seen. You know, every area of the council getting 7% or more, so above inflation rises, even with inflation at the high level it is currently. And as Councillor Hopkins said earlier, we are proposing a guaranteed minimum salary for our staff of £10 per hour. That's above the real living wage, and we will be the first council to move to that this year. And there will be an amendment coming when we get to the revenue account, because we not only intend to do that for our staff, but to also encourage those who are employed through contracts with others to move to that level as well. We can give a commitment again for no compulsory redundancies, and we hope no redundancies at all this year. Again, my intention is to, as I did last year, to make a commitment subject to the outturn report for us to see a further significant investment into the recovery fund, the local recovery fund. And again, we have the biggest local recovery fund anywhere in Wales, so that we can support our communities and our local businesses to recover from COVID. So this remains a budget for recovery, and we will do everything we can to help the communities around us. I wanted to share some headlines underneath that. So in terms of revenue, over the next year, we intend to invest some £43 million, and obviously it's significantly more than that over the 3 years. And in terms of capital, our capital programme again remains one of the biggest in Wales, and again is significant by any standard at some £413 million. And that is there not just for city centre schemes, because as I've said before, the largest parts of what we do are to invest in things like our new schools, our better school facilities, and of course housing programmes across our city. Oh, my apologies. Clearly, one of the Prime Minister's slides must have crept in there, but there will be no Peppa Pig in this budget this afternoon. So moving forward into education. So in terms of the education investment, we're proposing an extra £13.5 million into education services here, a record-breaking amount. There's a second tranche of that £7.1 million commitment to deliver a brand new IT estate across our schools. That, and of course, we're continuing with the rollout of our £150 million schools programme, with £43 million again rolling out last year and this year. We're pleased as well to be able to confirm that we intend to freeze the price of school meals, not just this year, but for the next 3 years. This will help save parents over £400,000 that they would have otherwise faced in terms of the nominal inflationary prices for school meals. So again, doing everything we can in each area of the authority to help take the burden and help families with the cost of living crisis. We'll continue with our essential repairs and £3 million set aside to assist with improving our buildings. And we're also making provision. We know that families across Swansea are facing the pinch with the energy crisis. That is only going to get worse given the issues in Ukraine. But we're making provision for our schools, and this will be extended to all areas to ensure that we can give energy price protection across the council to make sure that they do not face an additional burden when energy prices eventually rise and we come out of the current deal we're in. Turning to social care, again, record investment into social care this year at 15.7 million extra. Within that, there is £6 million, which is to help make sure that our social care staff reach that £10 per hour. And of course, as we've said, those staff that do not work for us but are obtained through commission contracts and employed separately will be working to make sure that they and their employers move to that £10 per hour as well. We intend to invest £1.5 million for new and better children's care facilities across Swansea. And it gives me great pleasure to confirm this evening, I'm sure it'll be welcomed across the chamber, that those new facilities, once open, will be dedicated to Councillor John Davis, who, as you know, was an outstanding cabinet member for care. But John, regrettably lost his life during COVID, and he is somebody who's remembered fondly across the chamber. So I'm really pleased to be able to confirm that we'll be announcing the name of the facility to be T. John Davis, or John Davis House, in memory of all of the efforts and impacts that John made to services in the council. We will continue with the £1 million for the local area coordinators, and of course they've been hugely important in supporting our communities through the COVID pandemic. We retain that £5 million COVID pressures reserve specifically to help social care deal with any unexpected pressures that may emerge in the coming year. And I'm very, very pleased to announce that we're also extending the free parking permits. Our staff who are directly employed already have the benefit of free permits so that they can park in areas of Swansea when they're dealing and supporting residents in their homes. But we'll be offering that now to those in the commission services, so those who are employed through contracts with independent employers, so that they will have the same benefits as our staff who are employed directly. Moving on to environment, and we will see an uplift of around 10.6 million in environmental services this year. There are some key announcements within this. We will be investing around 400,000 to complete the bay lighting from Mumbles around to the slip bridge. I want to pay tribute to the outstanding work and the idea initially from Councillor Des Thomas and Councillor Mark Child to light the area around West Cross, where they are responsible as councillors out of their community budget. We thought that was an excellent idea, and I'm grateful for that, and therefore we intend to extend that now and to bring forward a scheme as soon as possible to complete the lighting, so that the entirety of our beautiful world-class bay will be lit from Mumbles all the way around to the slip bridge. We're only stopping at the slip bridge because there's already lighting from that point up past the civic centre and on to the marina. In addition, we'll be investing over £10 million in new Mumbles, new sea defences, around Mumbles. And also this will allow us to do significant improvements and upgrades to the promenade. and we'll be obviously completing the consultation and confirming those plans in due course. But from what I've seen to date, it's going to be a spectacular improvement to the promenade, and it'll be wonderful to see those improvements coming, not just to aesthetically improve the promenade and make it a more enjoyable and usable space for everyone, but of course it brings with it the ability to protect homes, businesses and residences in the Mumbles area from the impacts of climate change. I'm very pleased that we're also committing a further £1.7 million to convert the remaining 5,800 streetlights, which are the old style, to the new low energy LEDs. This not only provides better lighting in communities, but it also allows us to save money on our energy bills, but also to reduce the energy usage, saving our CO2 emissions. So it's a really, really good initiative started by this administration. I'm very pleased that we can complete that activity. I'm also pleased to announce that we have and will continue to employ new bigger teams to deal with cleansing and litter. Those will be a central team uplift in terms of the numbers to deal with issues across our authority, but that will be coupled with a direct investment of new operatives, which will be community cleansing teams. What these will do will allow a community cleansing operative to be available to ward members on a regular basis, so that every community in Swansea will have dedicated time from that operative to undertake cleansing, litter, weed removal and minor repairs. This would have been something previously that members would have had to pay for out of their community budgets, but I'm removing that obligation from members. Members can still add to the time that they're able to get from the representatives, but this will allow every ward in Swansea, every area of Swansea, to have a dedicated resource to help with small-scale litter and cleansing issues in their wards. I'm very pleased as well to confirm a further £100,000 for new bins across Swansea, including the rollout of smart bins, and Councillor Thomas will be bringing forward further details in due course of the rollout of those IoT Internet of Things bins, but essentially they are bins with sensors in them that allow us to detect when they're becoming full or when they're empty, and we can then redirect our resources to ensure that we empty them when they're needed to, and that we don't send people when the bins are not full. We're also taking the opportunity to discontinue dog bins across the authority, and those dog bins will be removed. They are often bins that cause issues in communities, mainly because people do not like putting their hands into dog bins, and they often leave dog mess in bags on top of the bins, and then others come along thinking that those bins are full. So we'll be removing dog bins and we'll be replacing them with brand new multi-purpose bins. Every area of Swansea will get new bins. No area of Swansea will have their bin numbers reduced as a result of the change, but it will help us to improve the service, but also to put more suitable bins into all areas, and it will certainly mean, I think, a cleaner and tidier community in every area of Swansea. We made a commitment as well to improve our flood defences and prevention teams, and again I confirm this evening we'll be investing a further 660,000 to bolster those teams, allowing the cleaning of drains and the unblocking of drains on a more regular basis, and also for our larger teams to respond more rapidly where floods become a risk. I'm also pleased to announce that we're employing more people to increase the size of our patch team, and that will allow more time for each ward. So as you know, Councillor Thomas and the team will write to you on a regular basis to ask you for your priorities for repair or for larger repairs in the ward. This increased capacity allows us to do more in every ward of Swansea. So this means more roads having more time and more repairs being undertaken every year, and I'm grateful to Councillor Thomas and his team for coming forward with the proposals to make that happen. We're retaining our 48-hour pothole repair pledge, and again, we're very grateful to the public for utilising that service, and again, the overwhelming majority of potholes are repaired within that 48-hour period, and we have a significant amount of work that's been done again by our really dedicated teams. We're also grateful for the continued support of the Welsh Government in supporting more walking and cycling routes, and again we'll be making further announcements on the increase in that network in the coming months. Moving on then to our next subject, which is the community. I'm very pleased to reference the rollout of the play areas in Swansea. People will have seen a significant amount of openings already taking place across our communities. I think we're up to around 2.5 million. Every area of Swansea is getting enhanced play facilities, and of course we made our intention clear at Cabinet to increase the money available to support this above the 2.5 million. I want to pay tribute to the work being done by Councillor Robert Francis Davis and Councillor Stevens, together with Christy, our lead officer, to make sure these facilities are delivered in our communities. Given the scale of what we do, and I want to make it clear, we are the only council anywhere in Wales giving a guarantee to upgrade every council-run play area in our communities, and that is something I think that the public have really seen as a fantastic delivery, and I'm very pleased we've been able to do it. But outside of that, there are still requests for skate facilities and for youth fitness facilities, and I'm very pleased again to be able to announce this evening a further £1 million, which will allow us to upgrade skate facilities across our communities. Councillor Francis Davis and Councillor Stevens will be engaging with members to look at a strategic delivery of this, because we want to ensure that there's a good geographical spread of facilities across the authority, and again likewise for our youth facilities, where people want adult or youth outdoor training facilities, we'll be looking at where that provision is best placed to serve communities. I've mentioned, as did Councillor Thomas, the 100,000 for better public toilets, and very pleased to see that going in. I'm also very pleased to confirm that as of this year, the councillors' community budgets will increase by a further £5,000 per councillor per year. That will mean that each councillor will have at their disposal £75,000 over the next term, allowing them to deliver more for their communities. I was very keen, as you know, to make sure that more control over more of the council spend sat in the hands of the local representatives in each community. And this increased budget will allow more delivery of local priorities. Taken together with the removal of the burden to pay for operatives in communities, this will give significantly more spend power to local representatives to deliver the things that they've promised to their communities. I'm also pleased to confirm the continued rollout of free public Wi-Fi and the installation of next generation CCTV. Councillor Stevens has been working with officers to look at the strategic rollout of that system. It's proved challenging in some areas because it needs some technical infrastructure to support it. But of course, as we deliver the networks, that will roll out to more areas of the city. And again, it's great that we're able to offer many communities across Swansea free access to public Wi-Fi in their communities. You'll know that we're participating in the Queen's Green Canopy. I'm very grateful that Swansea has been successful in being chosen to be part of that scheme, and that this will bolster our commitment to plant thousands of new trees again this year across our city. And Chair, if I could just pause there for a second to say thank you again and acknowledge the outstanding work that our teams have done over the last few weeks in making safe trees that unfortunately did come down during the unprecedented 3 storms that we had on the trot. I think they absolutely went over and above the work to remove and make safe trees that had come down. So I'm sure all of the members in the chamber will join me and Councillor Thomas in thanking the teams for the work that they've done. Returning to the budget, Chair, there is a repeat of the funding that we have announced in previous years, so we'll be allocating a further £25,000 to support men's sheds initiatives across the county, and £25,000 again to support veterans. And I'm very grateful for the great work being done by Councillor Wendy Lewis, the Armed Forces Champion, to support veterans across the city, and of course working closely with the cabinet member Alison Pugh, who's got responsibility for veteran services. I'm also very pleased to confirm, and I know it'll be close to the hearts of Councillor Clive Lloyd and Councillor Joe Hale, that we will deliver on our promise to invest in a benefit payback scheme for the community of St Thomas and the surrounding areas of Bonny Mine, etc., for those communities affected by the operation of T John over many years. We've committed to close T John and move to other ways of dealing with any black bag waste. And of course, very pleased that Councillor Lewis has been able to bring forward plans for a new solar farm on the site of T John, which will be a great repurposing of that area. But I'm very pleased that we're able to commit to that, and I know Councillor Hale and Councillor Lloyd are also making access to the Economic Recovery Fund to supplement that award, so that they can deliver significant improvements for their community. I'm also pleased in this Jubilee year to confirm that as part of support that we can give for Jubilee parties this summer, we will be removing any fees for road closures or for those who wish to hold street parties, to make sure that we continue to support people's aims to enjoy this Jubilee year. It's something that's never happened in the UK, celebrating 70 years of Her Majesty's reign. So again, very, very pleased to be able to confirm that. And I'm also pleased to be able to confirm that we will continue with our support for the rollout of publicly accessible defibrillators across our communities. Councillor Lewis has been leading on this with a number of charities, and again I'm grateful to Councillor Lewis for bringing this to me, and I'm pleased to announce a further £50,000 to ensure that every community has access to defibrillators that are publicly accessible, and this will help us to save lives across every community of Swansea. Moving to housing and homelessness, as you know, we've had record-breaking investment over a number of years now as we've upgraded our existing housing stock, but also as we've moved to deliver on our promise to build some of the best homes and energy efficient homes across our communities. And again, this year, significant investment, £58 million going in to support better council homes across our communities in Swansea. Councillor Lewis at the last council provided answer to a question which laid out what each community is getting, and those sums are substantial and impressive. Within that, we've got £12 million for the next phase of new council homes, highly efficient, low energy homes, helping those tenants and residents that move into them to save on their energy bills. Also pleased that we're taking on a further 18 new apprenticeships, which will help people gain trades and experience in our house building programme. Very, very pleased as well with the Welsh Government support of £4 million to help us reduce homelessness and to continue to support our homeless in the city, including 330,000 to ensure that any person who becomes homeless or needs a safe place to stay can access our Always a Bed initiative, that we work with our partners in the voluntary and third sectors to ensure that anybody who's in that situation in Swansea has a safe place to stay. Moving on to Regeneration, I've mentioned the £135 million Copper Bay development and the new digital arena. Again, a number of the elements will come online in the coming days. I'm very, very pleased as well to confirm the funding that we've received from Welsh Government to continue the progress to move to the new library and local services hub in the old British Home Stores location. And again, was able to tour that facility with cabinet members recently, and it will be a very, very impressive new library and local services hub bang in the centre of our new city centre on the skirts of our new Castle Gardens. We're also on site building one of our other city deal deliveries, which is the £40 million new innovation and growth hub at 7172 the Kingsway for, as I've said before, depending on your Regeneration. It'll either be the Odeon, Ritzy's, Top Rank, or Jumping Jacks. But again, that will be the home to 600 jobs in our fantastic new business hub. There is now close to £3 million actually invested in Wine Street to ensure the redevelopment of that area, and that will complete in the next week or so. And I think the transformation that's already had for the businesses in Wine Street is fantastic. And again, we expect over the coming warmer months to see people return to enjoy those new outside spaces and the wonderful new environment that's being created in Wine Street. And of course, we're very grateful to again receive the Purple Flag accreditation for a safe, enjoyable nighttime economy in the city. We're also very keen to get on with the Newcastle Square Gardens redevelopment. Members will have seen the images that we've produced around that, and just like the arena, what we've produced there will be very, very, very close to the final delivery of that fantastic new space in the city centre. If you've seen the images, you cannot be anything other than impressed by the reinstatement of that fantastic new garden space in the heart of our city centre. Very, very pleased as well to see the fantastic progress being made at the Liberty Stadium by the Penderyn Whisky. Weavers, the contractors, the local contractors there are making great progress, and that will be open in very short time. And again, it'll be a great visitor attraction to complement what's going on Kilvey Hill, but also to complement the 350,000 people who will be visiting the new arena every year. We know that, again, if you've been to the top of High Street, again, big changes are underway there. Our fantastic historic Palace Theatre restoration is well underway, and that will complete over the next 18 months. And again, become a fantastic space for people to work in the new city centre, as well as a place for the community to meet. The Albert Hall is also currently under restoration, and we expect some further announcements from Welsh Government on that in due course. But again, within the next 18 months, we'll see the opening of the new 800 space facility there, another great venue within our city for bands to perform and for events to take place. Big news, as I promised, in terms of the public sector hub. That will be the first move on phase 2 of Copper Bay. You'll know that in the next few weeks, the St David's car park will start to be demolished, along with Llys Dewi Sant, the old nursing home that is on the site opposite the LC. That will allow us, after a period of time, no more than a year, to then begin the delivery of the public sector hub. And that hub is really important because not only will it be the home for our council services and our staff, but it will also bring together staff from the UK and Welsh governments and a number of departments, making a real economic change to the city centre. And just to put it into context, the arena will lift our economy by about £17 million a year. Phase 2 of Copper Bay will raise our economy by about £110 million a year. That is the scale of the difference it makes, because we will have thousands of people based in our city centre every day. And that is critical to repurposing the city centre and restarting the engine to make the city centre work for everyone. I'm also pleased that we're making great progress again with the Bascule Bridge, and that will be reinstated in due course. And of course, I'm very keen that as part of what we're doing at the Copper Works, that the laboratory building, which is linked to the Penderyn Whisky site, is also restored. And again, we're making preparations to ensure that facility is restored as part of the current works. Finally, Chair, moving on to recovery funding, I just wanted to again confirm that last year I was able to announce the delivery of a £20 million recovery fund, and that was based on the fact that if we had a substantial outturn position, which we did, then we would be able to fund a number of key initiatives across the city. And I'm very pleased to confirm that all of the things that we were able to agree last year are able to be rolled over again this year. Members will have been able to bid into that fund, and I know there are a number of live Economic Recovery Fund bids already going through the process to deliver improvements in communities across Swansea. I am able to confirm that we've had over 600 applications in from local businesses across Swansea. That totals some £6 million, and that those applications are being dealt with at present, with 80% of them being outside of the city centre. So 80% of that money is being invested in communities and in local businesses across our city and county. Around £12 million has already been allocated out of the fund, leaving around 13 million to be allocated this year. But in terms of the commitment that we've made to fund things for the coming year, all of the things listed there, including our free rides in all of the holiday periods, will continue throughout 2022. The free use of public spaces for our hospitality businesses will continue throughout 22 and 23. Free use of hire for parks for our local communities will continue. No pitch fees for any of the local sports clubs. Another round of grants for local sports clubs will be available. The grants for businesses, our local businesses, will continue. Funding for hundreds of new local community priorities will continue. Within that, there will be an extra £1 million for the communities of Mayhill, Winewen and Townhill to help them recover. There will be an extra £50,000 to help deliver the Human Rights City programme. I'm very grateful to the work that Louise Gibbard is doing and Alison Pugh to deliver our Human Rights programme, so that within a year we can make the declaration of being a leading human rights city. Our Branwyn Hall is a fantastic facility, but it does need some further upgrades in terms of members will be aware of some water ingress as part of the storm. So there's £375,000 there for Branwyn Hall repairs. I'm very, very pleased to be able to also confirm that on top of the biggest ever events programme we've ever delivered, which will include concerts deferred from the COVID period, plus all of the fantastic events that we've been able to secure, including Swansea's first half Ironman, that there's a further £150,000 that will be released from the Economic Recovery Fund to support the biggest ever investment in events in the coming year. Parking promotions will continue across the authority as well to help people get out and enjoy and support our businesses. I'm also pleased to confirm that we will allocate £150,000 to progress a dedicated COVID memorial to remember all of those who lost their lives to the COVID pandemic, but also those heroes who went out there every day, our key workers and our other staff and volunteers who did so much to support and look after our communities during COVID. I'm very pleased to also release funding from the Capital Contingency Reserve to support the restoration of the slip bridge, and we've made announcements on that, and also a further £100,000 which will be released from the Economic Recovery Fund to help with stage enhancements of the Branwyn. So we will continue with a further £20 million which will at outturn, subject to the money being available, and we are confident that it will be, that a further £20 million will be invested this coming year and added to the recovery fund that already is there. So if you remember, 20 million last year at this time, we added a further £5 million at the end of 2021, and I'm pleased to confirm a further 20 million now. That's 45 million invested by this council to support local businesses, communities and residents as we recover from COVID. Now, turning to council tax, obviously we are very, very mindful of the cost of living crisis and the pressures that households are facing. And therefore, Cabinet took the decision earlier this week to recommend that we reduce the amount of council tax down from the proposed 2% to 0.95%, and that equates to just 20p per week for the most numerous properties we have, which is obviously the Band B properties. And in real terms, that represents a significant cut in council tax because in inflationary terms, as Mr. Smith has said, inflation is running at above 5%. So we should really have seen a council tax rise of 5% just to stand still. But instead of that, we're taking the steps that we need to take, in addition to all of the measures that I've already mentioned, to slash the amount of council tax that was being proposed down to 0.95%. And that will be one of the lowest rates in Wales. And remember, Swansea's council tax is already one of the lowest in Wales, and this will allow us to help as best we can to reduce the burden on the taxpayers of Swansea. And I should say this is in addition and separate to the help that is available from the Welsh Government. So families and residents across Wales will still be eligible for that £150 help that will be allocated out by the Welsh Government to help with bills this year. So, Chair, that concludes my presentation for today, and happy to take any questions from members on this.
Thank you, Leader. Skip through any need for technical questions because nobody raised their hand immediately. Mr. Ben Smith finished his presentation. So go straight on to the political element, which you've just heard from the leader. And the first member I've got is Councillor Chris Holly. Chris?
Thank you very much, presiding member. I thought Christmas only came once a year, but it's plainly obvious that Father Christmas, in the guise of Councillor Rob Stewart from Morriston, has descended upon us with these gifts and these massive amounts of investment and what have you. And as I said to you before, and I'll compliment you again, as Napoleon said, I don't need good generals, I need lucky ones, and you are extremely lucky. And to be fair, you know, some of these, it's like a money tree has opened up and you've actually managed to spend it, and you spent it. And there's some very interesting and some very good, you know, schemes. Let's be blunt about it. You know, we're not in the process of actually opposing anything, which is, you know, let's be fair, some of this is extremely good. I think there's a couple of things I would like to ask you about, and that's in the savings, because it's very interesting. You know, I know we've spent a lot of money, and we are spending a lot of money on some very good things, but if you go to corporate services, we are cutting school transport savings identified part of a wider forecast. And there's quite a few down there, cleaning services, and also wider range director staffing cuts. And I think there are, you know, going through them, there are some interesting ones there. And I think one thing I would like to ask you is, and it's a commitment of you more than anything else, to be honest. In highways and transportation, there's two potential savings there. Partial removal of school crossing patrols where suitable safety measures exist. Also need to implement previous proposals. It's a sum of £25,000. Can I suggest to you that £25,000 of savings is when we are talking about something which is so important to everybody's life, school crossing patrols, that you reconsider that saving in light of what we've said, and if we can, as members, all members, regardless of what political party or where they belong, that all members are engaged in saving £25,000 on the budget you have.
Chris, we're not on that part of the report. It's just what the leader has outlined. That's I think you're referring to the revenue budget, aren't you, later? The next item.
The next item is medium term financial.
Just to remind everybody, we're currently discussing the presentation you've heard from the leader. You will get a chance to speak on each specific element under the report and under the specific report themselves. Just to clarify.
Well, with respect, presiding members, and who, I don't think there's nothing in this report that leader hasn't covered in his speech and his presentation. His presentation covered everything from, everything in the budget. So surely questions should be asked across the whole of the budget. It's not just confined to one report. With respect, the leader has spoken about everything and anything that's in this budget. So really speaking, we should be able to ask questions on that.
I'm more than happy to take Councillor Holly's question.
If the presiding member's ruling is that we come back to these, that's fair enough. We will have to come back to them. But, it seems to me as if that, if we are discussing the revenue budget and the capital budget, which is already referred to and is referred also to the House and Revenue Account law, I don't think there's anything anybody can say about that. But I do think that if we have talked about, he has as a presentation on the revenue budget and capital budget, then those questions should be asked. But if your ruling is that shouldn't be the case, then fine, we'll move on.
Yeah, we will have the opportunity to ask those questions under the relevant agenda item. Okay, we're now discussing item 9, the medium-term financial planning. You've had the Section 151 officer who's given the technical report. You've had the leader of the council giving the political report. Now, any questions?
Presiding member, I will come back in, if I may, with your indulgence, because I do need to move some more technical advice on each of the reports in isolation. I will be very, very brief, as I promised. Do I have your indulgence?
Yes.
Thank you, presiding member. So yes, the medium-term financial plan in front of you. There is only the one recommendation which I'll come back to seek you to move once technical questions have been asked for me, which is the medium-term financial plan is recommended to be approved as a basis for future financial planning. I draw your attention to section 1.3, which emphasises this is not a formal budget. It is a series of planning assumptions, and those planning assumptions are set out later on in the report. Picking up on some of the points in terms of the generalities I raised in my initial technical advice, I draw attention particularly to 2.7, as has already been indicated. Look, there's an awful lot of money coming for 22-23. A 9% plus increase in block grant is unprecedented. But we know with certainty the sums for the following years, and as the leader has already indicated, and I tried to allude to in my analogies, we know it's a lot less in future years, and the front loading of the settlement and the inflation at 30-year highs, whilst not back in 1970s levels, is very, very distorting on the overall position. And my advice to you is along the lines of, as well as reveling in the substantial nominal sums that are available, you must recognise, as I know you all do, that your pounds are going to be stretched as much as any households are going to be stretched. And I draw attention in 2.8 that at the point at which I wrote this report, there was significant global instability, regrettably much more so. So there is very little I need to draw your attention to in terms of the technical advice beyond the table, which is the assumptions I've set out, and very clearly setting out that the amounts available in future years is less in nominal terms than the uplift for the coming year, and those inflation pressures must bear upon your decision making. You are no more exempt from inflation pressures than households, but I do get that the focus of much of today is going to be around the pressures on households and why you are likely to set a low council tax this year, but this coming year, but you may have to consider higher ones in future years because you are not exempt as a council. So it's a series of planning assumptions. I always give you a set of assumptions. They're as uncertain as ever, but with some greater certainties over those underpinning amounts that we've got, and it's really useful to have a 3-year deal, but clearly times are going to get tighter after next year. And that's the only technical advice I need to give, presiding member, to officers on this one. This one is seeking your approval. I'll hand over to the leader unless there are any technical questions of me on the MTFP assumptions. That your approval that these are reasonable assumptions given the inherent uncertainties we face. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you, Ben. If you ask technical questions, are there any technical questions? I've got 2 hands up. I've got Lyndon Johnson, leader of the opposition party. Lyndon, is it a technical question?
What I was going to ask Mr. Ben Smith, actually, that obviously we're borrowing money for the school improvement, which is money well spent, I believe. There's no question about that. But obviously we're going out to the banks with that. How does that leave Swansea exposed in the current climate?
I mean, there's two elements to this, Councillor Jones. I mean, the bit that's really good news is that because we've borrowed all the money for the general fund before the inevitable interest rate rises, it massively de-risks the authority's exposure. I think the point you're making is that equally I've got to put the money in the short term somewhere, and we have very tight criteria as to which institutions we will utilise, and they're set out in the Treasury Management Policy. So I am very risk averse with the large sums of cash that we have. But it was a deliberate policy decision on my part, delegated to me as an officer, to borrow the money for the general fund. There is still some borrowing to be done for the HRA in due course, but I think it de-risks the authority's position very, very significantly. I think we've got the timing about bang on. It was an inevitability with inflation ticking up that interest rates were going to rise. How high they rise, we'll have to see. But I am totally relaxed from a locking in point of view. I've borrowed the money for nearly 50 years, and as I think I've indicated in previous updates to council, I think several of my successors will have some pretty restful nights on the general fund. That's not to say there aren't still challenges, but I think it massively de-risks the risks for the longer term, and obviously helps discharge some of our obligations to the wellbeing of future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Cheryl Philpott, is it a technical question to Mr. Smith? Cheryl?
No, it's not a technical question. It was in response to the. So
if it's not a technical question, can I ask you to hold your fire then, please? Because we've now gone to Rod Stewart's presentation report. Questions to Rob Stewart from leaders of the opposition groups first, please. Chris, do you want to ask Rob any questions on his presentation?
Well, it depends on what you actually are going to allow me to say, because obviously the questions I asked were about the savings, you know, but that, as you say, if that's coming in the revenue account, I'll wait until then. In the medium-term financial plan, it's a living document, and as such, saying comments about it now could literally mean nothing in a year's time. So, you know, as it's been rightly said, it is a basis for future service financial planning, and that's what it is, and we're just going to accept it as it is, as that. Thank you.
Councillor Lyndon Jones. Lyndon?
Great, thank you, Presiding Member. Leader, obviously some really good announcements there that who wouldn't be pleased with them, because the money is being spent not just in Swansea, but obviously in the communities as well, and that is something we welcome and always want to see happen. I'm pleased also that the council tax rise is going to be low this year, because there are pressures on families, as you mentioned, and they will get a lot worse because of the situation in the Ukraine. So that is obviously good. But I will say that obviously this reflects as well that, and the money that's available was the generous settlement to the Senate by the UK government. And they've been extremely generous to the Senate, and I think it's £2.5 billion this year above normal expenditure, and that is going to happen in the future too. So obviously this reflects that, and we obviously think that is obviously good news, because the people of Swansea will benefit.
Thank you, Chair. If I could respond to that, I'm grateful for Councillor Jones's acknowledgement of the investment being made by this Labour Authority, if I can use that term for a moment. But I would also point out that, you know, you can't have it both ways. I'm prepared to say yes, absolutely. It's good to see the taps finally being turned on in London, and for money flowing to the Welsh Government, and then the Welsh Government allowing it to flow on to the councils across Wales. But of course, that only puts into focus how stark and how starved we've been by the UK government over the last 8 or 9 years, because of course the settlements during the years of austerity have been awful. And, you know, thankfully, the Welsh Government have protected many councils in Wales from the worst of the austerity measures. Well, of course, our colleagues over the border in England have been decimated. So, yes, I'm very grateful that the UK government has finally woken up and is actually providing fair settlements to Wales and to councils in Wales through the Welsh Government's allocations. I just hope it continues and that we don't return to what we've had for the last 8 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Councillor Philpott, did you want to ask the question to the Leader on his presentation?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I got so engrossed I forgot to put my hand back up again, and forgive me for not putting my camera on, but I think a number of us are having issues with connection this evening. I had 4 specific questions about the presentation, but I'm wondering whether the leader would prefer to have the questions sent in writing, because they're more about detail, about, you know, the way that things would be managed. Or shall I ask them now, and the relevant cabinet members perhaps come back to us all on the answers? Do you want detail, or is it just sort of like an overview?
It depends on the level of detail, Councillor Phil, but I'll do my best to answer them now. I'm sure cabinet members would as well, but if they are significantly detailed questions, then they're probably better we do them in writing.
They're pretty quick, to be honest with you, and perhaps some things that you maybe not have thought about, so it might be a suggestion to be helpful. The first question is about the dedicated operatives. This was something that I know that we had in the past. It worked really well, but we also had we had a supervisor that we were able to phone, where as we go around and we see a hotspot or somebody would contact us, and we were able to contact them, and they had the facility then to clear perhaps litter or fly tipping really quickly. I'm just wondering whether that could be taken on board.
So I deal with that one first, Councillor Philpott. So the presumption here in terms of the planning, and again, I'm grateful to Councillor Thomas and Mr Nichols for their help in scoping this out. The presumption would be that each councillor would have access to an operative for at least 2 days a month, and that would be something. So if in a 4-member ward or a 5-member ward like Sketty, you would have 10 days per month guaranteed, and then obviously you could supplement that, and that would be in addition to obviously the teams that we've set up that you also have access to centrally. But I think the key thing about this, it allows for those people to be employed centrally and managed centrally. So for members who, and I know there are a number of members on here who've chosen in previous years to employ an operative directly in their wards, it is more challenging to do it at a local level. So we're taking away the challenge of that, but also then guaranteeing members a guaranteed number of days per month where the operative will work in their wards.
Okay, thanks. But you might want to take on the suggestion of having a sort of like a fast response, because I think it was really, really helpful. The second one was about the patch team, which is really great. But what about the roads that need more substantial repairs? I had to look up something yesterday, and I noticed, I think it's something like 750 million for the more substantial repairs is in deficit, and also about 250,000 for pavements. So, which, you know, substantive repairs is more than the patch team can do, and sometimes the patch team goes in and it highlights the potholes, and you don't get that sort of like robust finish. So I just wonder whether there is something that you can do in looking at the capital maintenance, the capital maintenance that we got at the moment, which ends in 2025, and actually maybe putting some money into that, maybe from the recovery fund to get some of the worst roads done, because I looked at one today, it's pretty bad, and I was told it comes out at something like 180th on the list. So I think that maybe that's something that you could consider.
Yeah, Councillor Philpott, if I come back, and Councillor Thomas may want to add, but look, there are 3 levels of engagement that we do here. So obviously there's the 48-hour pothole pledge, which continues, and then the larger works in terms of patch repairs. What we've done, working with Councillor Thomas and the teams there, is to change the amount of resources available, to increase them, so that each councillor will have more time available to them for the patch team to do works in their wards. And on top of that, within the £10 million that I've announced for the uplift in environment services this year is money for that general roads resurfacing programme. I don't think it's as high as 400 million. I think the last time I checked, I think it was around 40 to 45 million. I think the backlog that we had for roads if we were to do everything. And of course, we do not get funded, unfortunately, to be able to do it at that level. What I would say as well is under the Economic Recovery Fund, you can make bids in for traffic hotspots and for other road repairs, which can be considered as part of economic recovery. So that is something that you also have availability to do. But of course, we have many miles of roads in a large rural and urban constituency like Swansea. And we certainly aren't funded nationally to be able to repair the roads to the level that you've identified there. But I don't know whether Councillor Thomas wants to add to that.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Councillor Mark Jones.
Yes, if I could, just the addition, just to the actual amount that there's a shortfall of is around £70 million. So if we wanted to bring every road in Swansea up to a satisfactory standard, that would require an investment of £70 million, which we don't have. So obviously, we do continue to invest more as much as we can afford, and more than the previous years. But we have to prioritise the roads, and as the leader said, we put more into patch to make the condition of some of the roads that are not earmarked for resurfacing because they are not seen as high priority enough. Because when you've got that sort of backlog, there will always have to be this critical prioritisation of the worst roads. But the pothole repair team and the patch repair is meant to bridge that gap. And as the leader's already said, the local members, if you've got a particular bad patch in or a road in your ward, then you can apply to the Economic Recovery Fund for that to be considered for repair. But we simply haven't got enough money to be able to to fix that or plug that gap of £70 million.
Thank you both for your very great answers. I'm sure other members would find those answers very helpful. I got two very quick questions. The first one is really a statement about the walking and cycling. Nobody disagrees with the principle, but can we please have communication and consultation at the outset to save some of the issues that we've had, which have been very time consuming for officers and for councillors as well. All we need is that outset communication, and I'm sure that that you will agree to that. And then if I can move quickly on to the fourth question, it's about the defibrillators. I've noticed you put £50,000 for accessible defibrillators in each community. So is that £50,000 per member? I doubt it, because that seems like a lot. But for single member wards, that's sort of like not really equating that if you're a 5-member ward, for example, with Sketty. So I just wonder about how that money would really be shared out. And the other aspect on top of that is we have a number of independent living properties now. There used to be the sheltered complexes. They still have a lot of elderly people in there. And with Andrea's support, I wonder, could we make sure that each of our sheltered housing complexes, or whatever they're going to be, the terminology will be in the future, could have a defibrillator attached to them? And I thank you for your indulgence.
Yeah, thank you again, Councillor Philpott. Councillor Thomas and Councillor Lewis may want to come in on those answers, but just to play back really, on the cycling and walking routes, I think everybody welcomes the expansion of the network, and that's part of obviously our moves to create that active travel network, and we made great progress with that. What I would remind everybody though is that there was a consultation in the early stages of this. I think Councillor Thomas has produced the evidence of this, but of course unfortunately there wasn't a response to that at the time. And then there was a gap in between the strategy and the delivery of the schemes, which is, I think, what caused some of the issues that you refer to. But I know Councillor Thomas and the team there have ensured that engagement is there, it's repeated, it's visible. They've even been prompting local members to make sure that they respond to stuff when it comes out. So that assurance is already there, Councillor Philpott. I think Councillor Thomas has gone chapter and verse on that previously. On the defibrillators, that is an extra 50,000 on top of what's already there, and it is to help fill gaps in the network. So Councillor Lewis, as you say, has been working hard with the charities to look at a fair provision across the county to make sure that nobody is too far away from a publicly accessible defibrillator. This will add to that and help fill those gaps for our aim of becoming Wales's first defibrillator-friendly city, and that's the aim here, so that every community has access to a defib in their area. But I think Councillor Thomas and Councillor Lewis may want to come in.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, Mark, Councillor Mark Thomas.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, Chair. Yeah, because I don't want to rerun the consultation debate that we've often had at council, which sometimes gets a bit, people get a bit emotional about. But I think, look, I repeat what I said before. We do consult as much as we can, and very often we are working against very, very strict time limits from times that announcements are made about grant funding and then the rollout of that scheme. We do, particularly on the big schemes like the potential scheme for Waters Road, we've already entered into, consultation with the local community, with ward members, because we know that that's going to have a massive impact on road users and many people who visit the city centre, travel to and from. We've also just completed our new next year 5-year plan, effectively, of the integrated network, which we went out to consultation on, and at our insistence we carried out face-to-face meetings across 5 different areas of Swansea, whereas the legislation required, because of COVID, was we only were asked to carry out an online consultation exercise of that, but we wanted to engage people. But consultation is a two-way thing as well. We can, as the leader said, we can, listen and consult with people, but that requires people engaging with us as well. So when we notify members of the public that we're about to carry out the scheme, and councillors as well, please engage with us if you've got any questions, queries, because I do agree early consultation can avoid a lot of the conflict situations. It won't cure them all, because unfortunately in some cases people just don't want these schemes, and no matter what justification we can put in front of people and however much consultation we carry out, there are people who are dead set against the schemes, and despite all our best efforts we are unable to change that. And can I just add finally on you asked about the leader's generous offer of the 50,000 on defibrillators, but that's on top of, as the way I see it, of what we've already got as members. I mean, we've got allocated our budgets, and it's up to us how we spend that. So, for example, in my ward in Penclouth, I felt that defibrillators was a priority for me and my community, and out of the community budget, I paid for 8 defibrillators in Penclouth. So that discretion, that usage, if you feel as councillors it's a huge priority for you, then that's the balance. Perhaps we could spend more on roads and less on defibrillators or vice versa. But we are heavily funded, and I think the leader announced that ward members would have an extra £15,000. Well, that'll buy you 10 defibrillators. So for those councillors who are elected next year, you could, out of the extra money alone, get 10 new defibrillators for your ward. So, it isn't just this 50,000 that the leader mentioned. There's already pots of money available to us. So that's all I wanted to say, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Andrea Lewis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. And there's not much really to add to the question regarding defibrillators, other than just a minor amendment. That this would actually make Swansea the first defib-friendly city in the UK. So, it's no mean feat. And I think that we've seen some situations in the not-so-distant past where people have gone into cardiac arrest during sports matches, and there's been a defibrillator in the near vicinity, but nobody knew where it was. And I think, you know, that it's important that members understand, and public and the residents of Swansea understand the map of where they can access a defibrillator. And the intention is that they will be accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that there will be training involved as well for the community. So it's a really excellent scheme and initiative, and I'm really pleased that the leader is committing money towards this, which is really important. And as Councillor Mark Thomas has referred to, this additional funding will help fill the gaps. It's not to be the entire provision, it's just there's a mapping exercise underway, and I'm grateful to our council team who are linking with the company to identify where the gaps are. Just in addition, Councillor Philpott, you mentioned sheltered complexes and defibrillators at those complexes. Members may be aware we're undergoing a complete review of our sheltered housing supply and the actual approach that we're taking. We're moving more towards an independent living approach as opposed to sheltered housing. We're investing in the communal areas of those sheltered complexes as well to modernise them and make them more appealing, and also reviewing and looking at what we're doing in those communal areas in terms of offering perhaps classes, yoga classes, art classes, lots of things to capture and create that community spirit in those complexes. So I look forward to bringing a report, probably for information regarding what we're doing to enhance those facilities. But I'm certainly happy to do a review of where there are defibrillators, and if there are any gaps, I'm happy to look to fill those gaps in line with our initiative to be UK's first in terms of a defib-friendly city. So thank you for the suggestion, and I'll look into it in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Terry, this is questions to the leader on his presentation. Do you have a question to the leader?
I put my hand up twice earlier on, Chairman, and nothing happened, so I put it up again. The question was mainly for Mr. Smith. So if either I can ask the question or I'll pull.
Come on then.
Yeah, carrying on from the football team, I was wondering if Mr. Smith had any transfer requests, or did he have any free transfers? But the main question, technical, how much underspend was in the housing revenue account 21-22? I don't expect you to answer that. You can put it in writing, I wouldn't mind at all. But I'll give you a yellow card for now. I'll wait in case I've got to give you a red one.
I'm sure Mr. Smith will have it off the top of his head.
Liven up a bit, man. What's the matter with you?
Peter Newton.
I am going to rely on giving a written answer on that one, so I will do so in due course. I think, if I may, as I've come in, presiding member, remind members that although we've gone back to some of the questions to the leader, I have given my technical advice on agenda item 9. So I think, given no one else has indicated, with being slightly over presumptive, I think you probably are now in the position that I can invite the leader to move the recommendation, look for a second, and then you can probably move this first item. I hope you don't mind me coming in there. I will come back to Councillor Hennigan separately.
That's what I was about to do next time. Yeah. We've had your technical report, we've had the leader's political report, and we've had questions for the leader. Now comes Andrea Lewis. Andrea?
Lord Chair, I think I'm happy to move the report as as Mr. Smith has said, and I think Councillor Lewis is going to come into second.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, President Member. Very happy to second.
Good, thank you. Vote required. Mr. Evans, please.
Thank you all. The vote has been launched. Okay, I'll take some those unable to vote. If you can raise your virtual hands, and I shall call you. If you can vote for, against, or abstain. Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald.
For.
Is there anybody else been unable to vote electronically? No? Okay, can you please lower your hands, please? I will look to close the poll. And that is 4 with an abstention. Thank you, Leader. Chair.
Thank you, Hugh. Okay, item 10 then is the revenue budget 22-23. Now, we've received 2 amendments, okay, one from the Labour group, and one from the Liberal Democrats stroke independent opposition group. Again, I will call on the Section 151 officer to give his technical presentation on the report, and then councillors can ask technical questions of the officer. We then go to deal with the Labour group amendment. I understand this will be moved by Councillor Stewart and seconded by Councillor Lewis. I will then open it up for debate or questions, calling on the political group leaders, followed by other councillors. Okay, once the matter has been fully debated, the Labour group amendment will be put to the vote. If carried, it becomes a substantive motion. Okay, we will then deal with the Liberal Democrats stroke independent opposition group amendment. I understand this will be moved by Councillor Peter Black and seconded by Councillor Chris Ollie. I will then open it up for debate and questions, calling on again on the political group leaders, followed by other councillors. Once this matter has been fully debated, the Liberal Democrats stroke independent opposition group amendment will be put to the vote, and if carried, that becomes a substantive motion. Right, the substantive motion then will be the councillors' final opportunity to debate the issue not previously raised as part of the debate on the amendments. So once the matter then has fully been debated, the substantive motion will be voted on without any further debate. Okay, I hope that is understood. So first of all, the Labour amendment, and this is moved by Councillor Rob Stewart and seconded by Councillor Andrew Lewis. Leader, please.
Presiding member, may I interrupt again? Apologies, having used the TMO analogy. I do need to give some technical advice on this one first. And again, at risk of overstepping my place, I am conscious of the time, and obviously the rules of the debate in the chamber are yours, but this is probably procedurally the most complicated item. So there is a danger, again, apologies to Councillor Phillips for my sporting analogies, there's a danger you may be having 45 minutes of overtime. So I'll be guided by yourself as to whether you do wish me to start now, given you've done the preamble. I will, of course, be guided by yourself. But this is probably the most procedurally complex item, but I do need to give some technical advice first. So I will defer to you to give guidance to the virtual chamber, presiding member.
I say once again, you've taken the words off the tip of my tongue. It is 7 o'clock, or a minute to, 2 minutes to. We do for a natural break at 7, so I propose we take a 10-minute break at this stage, come back at 7:10, begin afresh with your technical report. Okay, thank you. 10-minute break. It's now 7:07.
I'm just starting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 7:07. We'll start again after our adjournment. Call upon Section 151 Officer Ben Smith to give his technical presentation first, and then it's open for councillors to ask technical questions of Ben. Okay? Mr. Smith, please. Ben.
Thank you, presiding member. I will be as brief as I can, but as I said, this one's going to be procedurally probably the most complicated item for the night. When I'm done, and subject to the debate to come, there'll be two recommendations once a substantive final motion is identified, and they're set out in the report in front of you. The first important thing to draw your attention to is the settlement itself in 3.2. I did say that there could be anticipated changes in the final settlement, and they should be minor and capable of being smoothed out through the contingency fund. So I do intend to advise you of that. The final settlement has been reopened and has been changed by the princely sum of £7,097. I think it goes back to the point I made at the beginning, which is I need to get this to balance to the pound, which makes it procedurally complex for me, but it has no material bearing overall on the broad strategic flourishes of the budget. And so I do intend to make that adjustment as set out in the contingency fund. And I do also propose, once you've debated the two amendments, to give you an on-screen shot of where you are, so you have the best advice I can give you on the night as to where you end up. So as I said, there's a very modest amendment there in that settlement figure. The rest of the report is in pretty normal fashion, but I draw your attention to section 4.6, which I've already referred to in terms of the materially significantly distorting effect of the front loading of the settlement, which is obviously very, very welcome. But you can see at the bottom of the table at the section 4.6 just how much of the budget is financed by that aggregate external finance increase as opposed to the proposed council tax increase. I draw your attention then also ultimately to the appendix. I think it's probably the best thing for me to draw your attention to, because that will be the thing I will in due course present on screen as a technical advice when we get to that point. And that appendix A sets out the very substantial increases in service budgets. You can see in appendix A £44 million going into services, and that is achieved primarily, as has been indicated through the leader's presentation, as well as the £33 million uplift in the settlement, a very modest overall increase in council tax, which actually only maintains the yield, because you've heard from me through various cabinet and council fora that the council tax base has been under a little bit of pressure. And I draw your attention particularly to the earmarked reserves draw. And again, for the avoidance of doubt, in a normal year, I would be giving you quite stern Section 151 officer advice about the draw from reserves, because it wouldn't be sustainable. But for the reasons the leader has set out in his presentation, the Economic Recovery Fund was set up to enable it to be rapidly distributed back in 2 years of dividend. So 25 million divided by 2 is about £12.5 million. So it's perfectly expected to see that sort of scale of reserve draw. The point I make is that as well as the base funding significant increases that the council tax and aggregate external finance increase achieves for particularly education and social services, as the leader has indicated, a lot of the local choice stuff is done as a result of that temporary use of reserves and will eventually have to be unwound. But again, as the leader has indicated in his presentation, with the expectation of it being a third year of a record level of underspend and add to reserves, there is the ability to stretch that again. So I think that's the most important bit of officer advice I need to give you. So, I mean, you all recognise and understand how the budget fits together and the consequences in future years when the money is going to get tighter. It's a political choice ultimately about the level of council tax, and I do get why members want to go low in a year when the grant settlement is high, but the council is not immune from those inflation pressures, and clearly all belts will be tightened in future years. So I don't think I need to give any further technical advice other than that, presiding member. I think members know what's in front of them in terms of the broad flourishes, and I've given sufficient in terms of the advice as to why it's an unusual budget and why it's so heavily front-loaded for 22-23. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you, Ben. Are there any technical questions to Mr. Smith?
Question, man.
No No one is indicated.
Sorry, presiding member. Just to ask you, you're going to do the amendments. Is it a technical question at the amendments, or do you want the technical question for the amendments now?
Technical question on the report.
Right. Okay. No, thanks.
And what Mr. Smith has added to the report.
No, that's okay then.
Okay. Right. We now go to the Labour group amendment. And I'm going to call on Councillor Rob Stewart to propose the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a very straightforward amendment, and I thank Mr. Smith for some technical advice in terms of making sure this is correct. Members will know that we, as part of the previous presentation, as part of the decisions on the pay policy settlement, was to go further than that and to go to £10 an hour. That is there for our staff, but of course we wanted to go further than that, and we wanted to also make sure that we were able to work with those who run the commission services for us, the employers, so that those people indirectly supporting our services are also able to move to that £10 an hour. So with that in mind, and following discussion with the Section 151 officer and the Director of Social Services, the calculation is that a further 350,000 is needed in order to achieve that, and therefore the most sensible way of funding that would be to make a move and take that money out of the central inflation provision, and that is what we intend to do here. So members will have seen, I'm sure, the amendment as circulated. So the proposal is that that money is moved into that to allow us to meet our aim not only of being able to move our directly employed staff, but all of those who are indirectly associated with the delivery of services through contracts, and that we work with them where we have the ability to influence, to make sure that we can get those employers as well to move to that £10 an hour level. So that's the amendment, Chair, and happy to take a seconder on it. Mr. Smith may wish to come back on the amendment advice.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we have a seconder first, please?
Can I formally second the amendment? It's with great pride I actually second this. It's only right and proper that we should, particularly on our own services, our commission service, try to reward probably the lowest paid. So more than happy to second this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Section 151 officers, do you want to come back in, Ben, at this stage?
Yes, I do need to come back in before Councillor Holly. I think, as I heard the leader mention £350,000, I do need to draw members' attention to it is £400,000 for the avoidance of doubt. To be fair to the leader and members, the Welsh Government made some policy commitments that we were due to fund, and we have needed to cost them, and we only received the final guidance yesterday as to the expectations as to which commission services. So I think it was a misspeak, as it were, but for the avoidance of doubt, members, it is up to £400,000 now. So apologies for coming in, leader. It was originally at 350 and it's had to be stretched further because of the policy commitment given by the Welsh Government, which you are proposing to go further beyond. So I give that advice, and I may need to come in due course on any questions Councillor Holly has, but for the avoidance of doubt, it's 400,000.
And on that basis, Mr. Smith, if I can just clarify, obviously that money is still available at the higher level, the 400,000 from the inflation reserve. Provision, sorry.
It is. I mean, my intention with both amendments is to neutralise them through other solutions in the budget to ensure there is no direct impact on council tax. This one is an unusual one because obviously it is a base adjustment, but we do hold a central inflation provision. And one of the things that I think we've got to weigh as a council ultimately is that ordinarily I get sniffy about base adjustments, but to some extent, given the workforce pressures there are both in direct services and commissioned services, there is to some extent an inevitability of a need to move further on these matters anyway. So it would come out of central inflation. That's the only way I can neutralise this one on council tax. That is acceptable to me. predominantly because as I've emphasised throughout, it's about what's going to happen over the next few years, and I see this as merely delivering some of the inevitable matters that you need to address as a council, as will all councils in due course. So yes, I can confirm it is available and done that way, and there's a reason why I'm content to allow it, given that I'm thinking particularly of the commitments that have been made by Welsh Government around expectations, not only about the current level of real living wage and your intention to go beyond that, but also the future likely increases in the real living wage, because advice is giving on that which is linked to inflation, and as inflation takes off significantly, those real living wage increases will go up in future years. So yes, I hope that clarifies the matter for you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Right, leaders of the opposition, Councillor Chris Holly. Chris?
Thank you, President Member. Ben, I understand what you're saying now, because one of the reasons I put my hand up to ask the question is I've never known you allow a base budget to increase from inflation or from any reserve because of the effect it would have. But given that what you're saying, not the fact that it's possibly the Welsh Government edict to actually increase the wages and increase the amount of money, then there's no reason why you shouldn't do it. But the caution about this is the fact that there's likely, as you have rightly said yourself, there is going to be a massive increase in inflation and how that will project through. So, you know, taking what you said and you know, taking the risk factor, but you are willing to accept that risk, that it can be, that you can use that contingency fund, then I think we should all support that, because there is a crying need for an increase in that wage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lyndon Jones. Lyndon?
Great, thank you. We support the amendment because I think, you know, our staff deserve that £10 an hour as a minimum wage. I think it's important. I think it's only just a bit above the living wage, the actual living wage, £9.50 in England at least, but £10, they deserve it, every penny.
Thank you, Lyndon. Is Councillor Peter May is the other group leader? Peter, are you with us or? No, if not, Councillor Mark Giles.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leader and Deputy Leader, for proposing and seconding this. I wish to speak in support of it. And the £10, as has already been stated, was a minimum pay for council workers is richly deserved. We moved to the real living wage for commission staff, or attempted to talk to the suppliers of commission services to move to that, and budgeted to assist them to move to that because of because of a number of factors, to be quite honest. Because one, as the leader described, many of the people in the social care sector have been key workers, have been heroes over the past 2 years, and on that basis alone deserve a real living wage, if not more. And also because we were having difficulties throughout the sector recruiting and retaining staff, and this is one of the ways that I'm hoping we will be able to recruit and retain staff in this sector, and I know that the Welsh Government are going to come along and meet their manifesto commitment of having a real living wage as a wage for social care staff across Wales. So on those bases, this is a step in the right direction. I mean, I would see £10 an hour for social care staff as a minimum, rather than the wage, as a minimum, because we need to make a career structure in caring. It needs to be a profession which is valued by society and valued in monetary terms and in terms and conditions as well, that reflects the key worker status that they've been given. And so this is a step in that journey, and very much welcomed. I very much welcome it. And they'll welcome it alongside changes in terms and conditions, which is something else the leader touched on in his earlier talk about the ability to provide free parking in residential care parking spaces for people going about helping neighbours, helping people's neighbours live independent lives through domiciliary care. So I think this is a great aspiration. It's a great thing to do for our staff. It's a great aspiration to have more commission staff in the social care sector, and to be honest, across any sector where we commission. I, like I said, wholly support this amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Member. You will know full well in many ways we've already discussed this within scrutiny in Child and Family Services and other social services. Obviously, I think we would all like to be able to do this. The only concern has been expressed basically is whether that's going to start almost a real competition amongst councils as to what they pay, because we know there's a limited pool in that respect. That's the only real concern I've got in doing this. But other than that, I don't know what we can do to mitigate the effect of that, to ensure that those people that we want to ensure get the money, the commission services people, can have that funding without setting off a train of consequences across Wales. And we've obviously said as well that we need Welsh Government policy on this set to ensure that that sort of competition between councils can be kept at a sensible level, with the staff getting rewarded as they should be.
Right.
Thank you, President Member.
Thank you, Paxton. Councillor Alison Peel. Alison.
Yeah, thanks, Presiding Member. I'd just like to support this. As somebody who's been a member of staff out on the community for donkey's years, it is a hard job out there. Let me tell you, it's not like anyone can imagine going into somebody's house and providing care. It doesn't matter how much training you've had, it's a whole different world. And our staff deserve to be recognised and paid a wage that people can live on. You know, Mark is right. This is a basic line for it. You know what I mean? Onwards and upwards sort of thing. And we don't want any of our staff or agencies that that we commission or anything like that to be, for anybody to be living in poverty. You know, and we value them, we recognise them, and whatever we can do to help and to recruit. And all the research shows if you pay people properly, you will get all that back in the economy, because they will spend, and everybody's lives improve. So I'm more than happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Clyde Lloyd.
Yeah, just very briefly, I support everything that's been said. I'm a bit disappointed that Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams sounded like the governor of the Bank of England there, where he was telling people not to go too mad in paying people what they deserve. Maybe when they should have done something with the bankers back in the 2008 when there was a financial crisis, and we wouldn't have to be talking about wage restraint rather than paying people what they need and they deserve. Totally agree with Councillor Mark Child and the leader. This is long overdue. We've got to create the right career path for people in social services, whether they're adult or child and family. This is, like I said, long overdue, and I'm really happy that we support this tonight.
Okay, thank you. No, Snowdon. Can't allow it in the back game pass and go back and forth. No one else is indicating to speak. Leader, do you have someone as the mover, please?
No, Chair, I absolutely agree with the comments of my colleagues. I agree with Councillor Lloyd as well. I think for Councillor Paxton and Williams to suggest people continue to remain on lower salaries when we've got the opportunity to raise them is out of kilter with where we are as a council and where we are as a decent society.
Sorry, Presiding Member.
I'm very pleased to...
I didn't say that. What I said is, it needs the Welsh Government to get together to talk to councils to make sure that we get into a situation where councils are not fighting one another for staff. That's the only point I was making.
Okay, that was a point.
I think we know the point you're making. Let's move on, Chair. I got nothing further to add. I'm just very pleased that to move this amendment, and I hope all members will support it.
Okay, thank you. It's been duly moved and seconded. So the vote, Mr. Evans, please.
Okay, the vote has been launched. I'll give you a couple of moments. Okay, has anybody not been able to vote electronically? If you can raise your virtual hands and I will call you in order. The first name, Paxton Hood Williams.
Sorry, I thought I voted, Chair.
So you need your hand is up. Apologies.
Sorry, my apologies, I didn't take it down.
Is that right? Will Evans.
Oh.
Beverly Hopkins.
For.
Wendy Lewis.
For.
Graham Thomas.
For.
Hannah Norton.
For.
Andrea Lewis.
For.
Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Linda Tyler Lloyd.
For.
I've got several hands still up, but I think I've called you all. So is there anybody unable to vote that I've not taken their verbal vote for?
Steve, get your hand up, Paxton.
Sorry, I thought I'd taken it down, presiding member.
That's good.
Okay, I will close the vote.
No, it's down.
Yeah, it's down now. Then I think there's a little slow as well tonight. Closing the poll, and that is unanimous for presiding member.
Thank you. Right. Amendment now becomes the substantive motion, okay? Now we're dealing now with the further amendment, which is the Liberal Democrat stroke Independent Opposition Group. Who's going to propose? Peter Black, I understand. Peter, you got?
Yeah, thank you, presiding member. First, I obviously move the amendment. This is an issue which affects a substantial number of people in Swansea as well as across the rest of Wales and the UK, though Swansea is by no means the worst affected areas in the UK. People living mostly around SA1 and the Marina in privately owned properties are facing staggering bills from developers to pay for remediation works. Some have seen service charges rise from £3,000 to nearly £8,000 after buildings faced fire safety tests. And this isn't just about cladding, this is about fire safety as well. Nobody actually knows exactly how many buildings are affected. The Welsh Government don't know. I don't think the UK Government knows. I don't think we actually know. We estimate there must be about 850 to 1,000 in Swansea who are affected by this. And of course, there is no fund to remediate these buildings. The Welsh Building Safety Fund is designed only to identify the affected buildings and to create a fire safety building passport to document the failures in each building. Only social housing has had publicly funded remediation works. Now, nobody's proposing that the council steps in and fund this. What we're saying is that people are, for the last 5 years have been under a great deal of stress and strain because of the impact of this cladding issue on them. They're facing increased costs for themselves. They're facing uncertainty as to what exactly is happening, and many people are looking for advice and support as to how they can take this forward. And what we're suggesting is very much along the lines of the Greater London Assembly, is we set up a support hub where the council can give advice through drop-in sessions and support on such issues as completing funding applications, advice on the EWS1 process, advising leaseholders of their rights, and that we would fund that right to empower leaseholders to assert their rights and successfully navigate the situations, while also sending a very strong message from the council that these residents are supported and that they shouldn't be out of pocket, and that we don't let the building owners off the hook. So I would hope, therefore, that we can support this amendment. It's a very modest sum of money compared to the council's overall budget, but it could be an important one in terms of how it can support those residents who are affected by this particular issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Is that seconded?
Yes, I want to second it.
Thank you, Chris. Right, Councillor Rod Stewart.
Can I speak to the amendment, presiding member?
Sorry? Second. Yeah, do you want to speak now? Yeah, yes, certainly, if you seconded it, yes.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Black has said is proportionally right. The amount of people and the amount of money we're talking about is very, very small. The amount of people, 800 people, and the amount of money at 80,000 is a very, very small amount considered to the budget. I think we haven't had the technical advice of the Section 151 officer, but the amount of money concerned is so small. I can't see that is going to be an obstacle. What is an obstacle is the fact that if we don't do anything, if we sit back and don't do anything and we wait for some other organisation to do it, these people are still going to be in this position. They're still going to have the stress. They're still going to have the worry about the future, what the future will bring. So I hope everybody can support this. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Rob Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Just speaking to the motion for a second, there's a couple of points I want to draw to members' attentions. I have had the opportunity to raise this with Councillor Holly. I was grateful for sight of the amendment when it was circulated. Councillor Holly wouldn't have been, Councillor Black wouldn't have been cited, I don't think, on the Economic Recovery Fund application that has already been submitted by Castle Ward members, which has gone in to achieve exactly the same aims. In terms of, we don't disagree with the need for the support that's there, and that the potential for the need for help and assistance is there, but of course there is a review going on at the moment. But also in terms of the wording of the motion, I think it's technically inaccurate. And Chair, I would ask that we bring Councillor Lewis in just to say a little bit about that. But all I would say is I would hope that the members who moved the motion would understand that this is already in hand. Therefore, there is already an application in to achieve this. We need to understand the outcome of the Welsh Government review as well. But there's no issue with the principle, but the amendment itself isn't needed because already there is funding being requested, which is likely to be approved to achieve this. So in that respect, the amendment isn't required because it's already work in progress. So with that, I mean, again, I welcome the 151 officers' views on that, because I wouldn't wish to move money around that isn't required unnecessarily. Principle is fully accepted.
Thank you. Let's have Andrew Lewis first then.
Thank you, Presiding Member. And just following on from the leader's comments, my understanding is that the application to the Economic Recovery Fund specifically refers to pending the Welsh Government review, which I think is key. And this is about timing for me. So Welsh Government are still developing their various packages of support to leaseholders. So I think, and I feel the suggestion is slightly premature. And actually looking at the involvement that we have, so our head of housing and public health is actively involved on various stakeholder groups looking at this from an enforcement and funding perspective. Using the London example is fine, but it's not really comparative. The difference is with the 32 London boroughs compared to the 22 local authorities, there are far more high-rise, for example, in London than there are in Swansea. And I think it's probably more useful to have an all-Wales approach, but looking at councils to give some funding towards that and some support towards that. Setting up a hub might be a little bit overkill in terms of the demand that we'll have for that hub, because there are only a small number of buildings impacted. But that is the current state of affairs, because the current building regulations of fire precautions look at buildings over 18 metres tall. And my understanding is that Welsh Government are looking to lower that threshold to above 10 metres. So I think it's important that we seek the review's findings before, and Welsh Government support that they're going to offer before we go down this route. So the other thing that I just wanted to raise is that if any residents did have any concerns regarding fire safety, they are more than welcome to contact us or the fire service to request an inspection using the relevant fire safety legislation. And I think I'll leave it at that, Chair, but my advice would be to wait and see the outcome of the review before we proceed with any matters of support.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Just a quick question to Peter Black. Do you want to persist with your amendment, Peter?
Yes, I'd like to hear what everyone else is saying. I'll respond in the summing up, Chair. That's okay.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Yeah, presiding member, I certainly agree in principle. The people that I've spoken to who are affected are, they live in fear very often because they think their property, if it did catch fire, there would be problems. And it is really dragging on everywhere, really, and it is something that really does need to be solved. And my heart goes out to those people because it is a real problem.
Okay, thank you. And Section 151 Officer Ben Smith. Ben?
Yes, I've been asked by the leader to give some technical advice, and I will give technical advice on a couple of levels, if I may. First of all, for the budget procedurally, the motion as worded is fine. I note the comments that other members have made. The budget procedure rules are constructed on the basis of, is it lawful? Can it be done? Yes, it can. On that basis, the amendment can stand procedurally. It's more a matter of should it at this stage, and I think that's the point that some of the members have made. From my point of view, it's a one-off sum, and I frankly don't care which reserve it comes from. Speaking in the vernacular, I note the leader suggesting that it could come from the ERF, and indeed it could do. I'm quite ambivalent either way. I think to some extent it's for the proposers of the motion to consider whether they wish for utter transparency for it to be moved today to potentially become the substantive motion, but with that default alternative position, and that's for debate in the chamber. But I'm satisfied procedurally the amendment stands, but I do recognise the points that have been made by the leader and Councillor Lewis about sequencing of the item and when it's the right time to do it, because I am aware that there are consultations ongoing. So I think it's right that those are being drawn attention to, but procedurally I'm more than happy that the motion stands as is, but I will defer to the members that have moved the motion and ultimately be for them to decide, and then ultimately council to decide what to do with the matter.
Thank you. Councillor Clive Lloyd.
Yes, just a quick question. Again, nothing wrong with the principle of this motion, as the leader and Councillor Lewis have outlined. But all I would say is that at this stage, are we aware of a lot of these properties are privately built properties as well? So I was just wondering, from Welsh Government and Welsh Local Government Association perspective, what are the conversations that are taking place with some of the private companies that built these properties? And again, all I would say is this a bit premature of things that are happening behind the scenes with the private companies that quite rightly should be stumping up some of the cash for all of this as well?
Thank you. Councillor Mark Thomas. Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Listening to all the different viewpoints on this, I mean, on the basis that, I think it's been alluded to that all or most of these properties concerned are in the Castle Ward. And if the Castle Ward members, the people who live and work and represent that ward, have put a bid into the ERF for funding.
Point of order, some of them will be in the SA1, I'm guessing, as well.
Okay, but my point was, my point doesn't change. It's in that if those members who are representing the bulk or the majority of these affected properties have sought to put a bid into the ERF funding, then surely we should be supporting the views and the moves of the ward councillors rather than the big council doing something. You know, if this is something that they have work to do and work to provide, then I would be much more comfortable supporting them through the ERF process, Chair.
Councillor Rob Stewart.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, it was just a point of clarification, really. All the point that we were making was, and just to repeat, this is something which is already in hand. So it's a bit strange, as has been said, for the amendment to then move to do something that's already being done. And you know, as other colleagues have made, there isn't an issue. The point that the other colleagues have made, there isn't an issue with the principle of help, and that's accepted, and there'd be no objection with that. But I do not see the sense in moving money unnecessarily when potentially provision is there. And as I think that the technical officer came back and said, it can be taken from any fund, but of course what we want to do is to ensure that money is used for the best purposes and in the right way, and that can only be after we know what's happened in terms of the Welsh Government review and the report back, to ensure that the money that is there, or potentially there, will be used to support the right people.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, appreciate your point, but of course it's still the prerogative of the mover of the seconder to persist. So yeah, Councillor David Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies if my camera goes off again. I've been put in a difficult position by my colleagues in Castleboard, in a difficult position by this amendment, because whilst I do appreciate, and my colleagues will appreciate the support, and I think the point of Councillor Lloyd, it's going to move in May to the new ward, but it shouldn't be waiting on whoever gets elected for that ward in May, something that is probably needed to be done now, or at least set in motion now. But the points were made about the Welsh Government are very important. We don't know what's going to happen in regards to this. And I don't want to have anything that will confuse an issue that's very important to the people who live in our ward at the moment. And it's not clear what will happen if we adopt that motion today, with two issues going forward to achieve basically the same thing. And I would ask Councillor Black and his seconder if they wouldn't withdraw the motion tonight. And they, you know, we do welcome the support, but I don't want it to be confused. I don't want to be put in a position, because I'm unsure about the longer implications of their motion, of voting against something they actually think is what my colleagues and I have already been trying to do.
Thanks. Councillor Andrea Lewis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just wanted to come in with some additional information which will hopefully give further reassurance. My understanding, and I realise that the amendment refers specifically to cladding, but actually the Welsh Government review is looking at a much broader picture in terms of defects in general in relation to the internal compartments, fire breaks, and we have done some testing on the buildings that Councillor Black refers to, and I can assure you that there is no Grenfell type situation where the cladding is flammable and dangerous. This is more about the compartments and the way that the structure is done, which falls foul and doesn't comply yet with our fire regulations. But Welsh Government are looking at this very closely, and it's much broader and much bigger in terms of their review, rather than just cladding. And so it's important that we let that review carry out, we get the findings, and then we can move forward accordingly. But I do empathise with the residents, but I just wanted to give assurance that we're not in a dangerous situation for those residents. It's just about making those buildings compliant, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, no one else then. It's Councillor Peter Black to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate, you know, the comments that have been made by all members, and particularly the clarification given by Councillor Andrew Lewis and the leader on this issue. I think that the issue for me is that it's 4.5 years since Grenfell fire, you know, the terrible tragedy, and residents have had 4.5 years of uncertainty. They've seen their service charges going up. They've had, in some cases, had to deal with insurance companies. Landlords have been intransigent in some cases and difficult to deal with, and all those residents are under a great deal of stress and strain. And my concern is, and particularly the last comment from Councillor Lewis, in terms of the much wider remit of the Welsh Government review, is how much longer are they going to have to wait until we're able to actually put into effect the bid which has been put into the council, in terms of the solution which I'm proposing here, and which you say you want to put in at some stage. Because if we're going to wait for for a Welsh Government review, it could be a month, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months. Nobody actually is clear on the timescale of that review, and all we're doing is adding to the uncertainty for the residents, and which is why I felt it's important that we actually take some action now to start putting this into motion in terms of the motion of the amendment being put forward. So that's why I want to press ahead with this amendment now. I just want to say one other thing. I absolutely totally agree with Clive Lloyd. It's the privately built company, the companies who built these properties should stump up the cash. The problem is that they're dragging their heels, they're taking their time, and residents are suffering more and more uncertainty because of it. So I think, you know, passing this amendment now will send a clear message to the residents themselves that we're not just going to hang around waiting for a review after review after review for an unspecified timetable, but we're actually going to do something about it now. So I would press ahead with the amendment, Chair.
Okay, thank you. It's now time to put the further amendment to the vote. Mr. Evans, please.
Okay, the vote has been launched. Okay, let's see if anyone's unable to vote. If you can raise your virtual hands. Councillor Will Evans.
Against.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
Against.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Fiona Gordon.
Against. Sorry, I accidentally. It's difficult to vote on screen, so against.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
Against.
Are there any other councillors who've been unable to vote electronically? Councillor Hannah Lawson.
Against.
Okay, I shall close the poll then. And that the majority is against.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
So that's it's back to the Labour
So the substantive motion is the Labour amendment. So will you take the vote again, please, on the substantive motion?
Mr. Evans, before you come in, perhaps if I may, for indulgence again, I can display on screen so that members are clear what they are voting on, if that would be of assistance.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Go ahead.
Just seeing if I can find it. Apologies.
Okay.
Having offered to do it. Let's see if I can find it. Hopefully you can see that on screen.
Yes.
So for the avoidance of doubt, so the substantive motion with the Labour amendment having been passed, but the Labour independent one not, I've highlighted in red, so that there's still the same two proposed recommendations in front of you, and they're silent in the frontispiece to make it easy for me to present on the night. So you'll see that £400,000 has been added to the social services line for the Labour amendment. You can see that I've taken £400,000 out of that central inflation provision. And at the same time, because of the technical advice I gave you, which was to remind you that there was a £7,000 increase in the revenue support grant as a result of the settlement, I was able to put an extra £7,000 into contingency, which technically goes in as an earmarked reserve. So I've shown on screen all of them rippling through. Again, then you can see the 7,000 addition to the revenue support grant, and you'll see the overall increase of £7,000 to the total financing, £7,000 to the total requirement. But most importantly, you will see I've neutralised it fully in terms of the impact on the council tax. So this original motion, which was that it was that council tax increase of £1,462.10p, which was a 0.95% increase, still stands. So I thought it was helpful, like I did last year, to present on screen to members what the amended substantive motion is, because that will be important when we come to the statutory resolution in due course. That's all I needed to give in terms of further technical advice, and I will attempt to regain control and stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Okay, well, it's been duly proposed by Councillor Rob Still and seconded by Councillor Andrew Lewis. So we go to the vote, please. On this substantive,
there is a chance to debate further on things that haven't been raised.
Okay, do you want to further debate, please?
Only if we don't
debate if you want something.
Yeah, Chair, nothing further to add from us. I mean, I think we've moved the report plus the motion, which has been accepted. So very happy to go ahead and formally move again.
Okay. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Okay, the vote has been launched. Okay, anybody unable to vote electronically, if you could raise your virtual hands. Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Is there any other councillor being unable to vote? No. I shall close the poll. Give me a moment. And that is majority for with an abstention. So the substantive motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Right, so that takes us to item 11, capital budget and programme 2021-22 to 2026-27. Again, section 151, officer, please, Mr. Smith. Ben.
You'll be pleased to know on this one, presiding member, I don't need to give any technical advice. The capital programme is a rolling programme and the leader has referenced the £414 million worth of spend. So I think the report is self-explanatory. So unless there are any specific questions of me, I have nothing further that I need to draw your attention to by way of my technical advice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Councillor Rumsfeld then to move the resolution.
Thank you, Chair. Very happy to move this report.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Lewis, second.
Very happy to second, presiding member.
Thank you. Are there any? No one's in. Yes, we are. Councillor Monkchild.
Just briefly, I believe it's in this part of the report, but just to say imitation is a sincerest form of flattery, I believe. And so the lights along the prom that you and I put there, I think I speak for you as well. It'd be great to see them along the rest of the prom as well. They've been universally popular, so I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, well done, Mark. Okay, could we go to the vote then on page 128?
Okay, the vote has been launched. Okay, for those unable to vote electronically, if you could raise your virtual hand. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Any other councillors unable to vote electronically? Okay, I shall look to close the poll. And that is the majority for with one abstention.
Thank you. Item 12 on our agenda is the Housing Revenue Account, HRA, Revenue Budget 2022-23. Again, Section 151 Officer, Mr. Ben Smith, please.
I will be brief on this one, presiding member. They've got 3 recommendations in front of you, and I'll defer to Councillor Lewis in a moment. I will, by way of technical advice, draw your attention to section 4.15 and 4.16. The distinction I drew in my analogies at the beginning, which were around the difference in treatment between the general fund and housing revenue account, are important. There isn't the same distorting amount of block grant going into the housing revenue account, and it faces a cap on its increase in rent increases of 3.1%, as that table sets clear. I think the important bit is to reiterate the advice I gave to Cabinet, which is the additional income effectively pays for the first 2 items in that table, which is ploughing money back into revenue repairs and revenue contribution to capital. The rest of the pressures are effectively addressed by management and other efficiencies in the HRA, and the pertinent bit is it's such a fundamentally different business model that ultimately in 4.16 income significantly exceeds the spend on the HRA revenue account and is able to support a very substantial HRA capital programme, which will be the next item we consider after this one. That's all I need to give by way of technical advice on this item, presiding member. I defer to Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Andrew Lewis, please.
Thank you, presiding member. And I think it's important to start by reiterating the fact that the housing revenue account is a specifically ring-fenced account, which is not able to subsidise in any way the general fund, and vice versa, the general fund is not able to subsidise the HRA. The housing revenue account only has several ways of creating an income in order to invest in the capital programme, which is in the next report, and that is to raise rents and recover rents. That's to have grants from Welsh Government, and that's to borrow. So it's critically important that we make sure that we have sufficient income to cover what is a significant capital programme in the following report. Just for members' information, just to highlight some of the parts of this report. So as is stated in 3.1, it's Welsh Government's responsibility to set the rent policy for Wales. They did this back in 2019, and part of that policy was to set a cap of CPI plus 1%. However, in the event that CPI should exceed 3%, then there would be a cap of 3.1% for councils to not increase by anything more than that. And so this is why we've set our rent increase at the maximum to fund what is an extensive capital programme. I think it's important also to point out the fact that Swansea, in the league table compared to all the social landlords across Wales, is still hugely competitive. We remain 29th out of a league table of 49 providers. Also, the current average rent in Swansea, if you look at the average rent for the private sector, it's £130.78 per week. And we would be looking for this increase, which would equate to £102.72. So we are still the lowest rent provider in Swansea and are very comparative with other social landlords across Wales. The other thing which Mr. Smith has pointed out, and I'm grateful to him, is this rent increase will mean, according to 4.16, that income will exceed the expenditure next year by £28.3 million. And this will be invested not only back into our existing council homes, but into our new build programme. And I'll tell you more about that in the next report. But the thing I wanted to point out is that, in my opinion, and this Labour administration holds in the highest regard, that everyone deserves a safe, warm, affordable home, a quality home, an energy efficient home, and we will continue to invest tens of millions of pounds every year in our council housing so that tenants can benefit from this major investment programme. And I'm very happy, Presiding Member, to move the recommendations, and I'm happy to take any questions that might follow from members.
Thank you, Andrea. Councillor Rod Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lewis has covered it really well, as always. I would just re-emphasise one of the points that Councillor Lewis made, which is that this money is ring-fenced for the investment in the homes that we want to build for the people of Swansea. We still have far too many residents waiting for homes in our city. We have still too many people on the waiting list. The only way we can reduce that is by building more homes. And of course, we're not building ordinary homes. We are building brand new, highly energy efficient, low cost homes that make sure that people, when they move into them, who may be on low or no incomes, are able to remove a big bill that they would otherwise face, which is their energy bills. So again, very, very supportive of this, and Councillor Lewis has outlined all of the other reasons why we should be doing this, and I'm really proud that we're able to do this evening.
Thank you. Okay, the recommendations are on page 149, been moved and seconded. No one has indicated they wish to ask any questions, so take the vote, Mr. Evans, please.
Thank you. The vote has been launched. Okay, for those who've been unable to vote electronically, raise your virtual hand. Councillor Will Evans. For. Councillor Ben Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Han Lawson.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Any other councillors unable to vote? No. I shall close the poll. And that is the majority for with an abstention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 13 on our agenda is the Housing Revenue Account Capital Budget and Programme 2021-22 to 2025-26. Again, Section 151 Officer, Mr. Ben Smith, please.
Again, I can be very brief on this one, Presiding Member. Again, it's the rolling capital programme, and the recommendations and the appendices logically flow from the decisions you've made on the HRA revenue budget, which indicates the very substantial HRA capital programme, which is afforded by the borrowing, which is financed from HRA revenue, and the significant revenue contributions to capital. So I have no further technical advice I need to give on that matter, and would again defer to Councillor Lewis on this item.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I appreciate that it's been a long night already and we do have an important notice of motion. So if I can have your indulgence just to highlight some of the significant investment contained in this report. So firstly, just to draw members' attention to the fact that there's a revised programme within this financial year, and the current programme is £47.42 million, certainly not an insignificant amount, Presiding Member. But in the next 4 years for this capital programme, we will see, to improve wind and weatherproofing and roofing, windows and doors, 109 million pounds, 23.5 million pounds, almost 6 million pounds, and almost 3 million pounds. In terms of fire safety of our properties, we'll be investing over 8 million pounds. The kitchens and bathrooms that are outstanding could be for many reasons. Sometimes tenants don't want to go through the disruption of having the work carried out, for example. So anything which is left outstanding in terms of kitchen and bathroom improvements, we'll be investing 14 million pounds. And the more homes, the new builds, the new council homes that the leader referred to with high energy efficiency, superb quality, which far exceeds any private properties that you will see, not just in Swansea, but across the UK. The highest quality delivered by our building services at the moment, I'm pleased and proud to say. And we'll be investing a further over 88.5 million pounds in new housing and new acquisitions. This equates to, it was remiss of me, we'll also be looking at 28 million pounds of investment over the next 4 years to put solar and battery storage on our existing council homes. This is the step forward on our journey in terms of decarbonising our homes and helping to further tackle fuel poverty. So this leaves a total of £313,438 investment over the next 4-year capital programme. But there is one item omitted, presiding member, that I want to draw members' attention to this evening, and that is my intention to bring forward the investment for the tenants of Griffith John Street and to include that in this next 4-year programme. So I will be working together with lead officers to make adjustments and amendments to bring forward that much needed investment in those high-rise blocks. And I will bring some further information, I'm sure, in further reports for members' information. Again, very proud to move this report this evening. I'm very happy to take questions, presiding member.
Thank you, Andrew. Is that seconded, please, Leader?
Chair, very happy to formally second.
Thank you. No questions, therefore straight to the vote. The recommendations are on page 160 of the agenda.
Okay, the vote has been launched. For those unable to vote electronically, I'll raise your virtual hand and I will take your votes now. Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Councillor Graham Thomas.
For.
Is anybody else unable to vote electronically? We shall go back to close the poll. And that is unanimous for, presiding member.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 14 is a statutory resolution on the setting of the council tax. Again, section 151, officer, Ben, please.
Thank you, presiding member. Hopefully you can see on screen the revised statutory resolution. Again, this is for completeness, and if you are so content to move it, I will send it through to Mr. Evans in due course for the minutes. You'll see highlighted in red on screen that I have amended 3 of the figures. That is solely to recognise the technical update I gave in terms of that £7,097 of additional revenue support grant and how I've allocated it. It already reflects the adopted report and recommendation in report number 10, and you will see that none of the council tax figures change because I've neutralised them. Mr. Ben has done some work behind the scenes to make sure there is no overall effect. So again, it's for the avoidance of doubt as to the statutory resolution you are passing, and that's the only technical advice I need to give on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Who's moving, Rob? Leader? You're moving?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very happy to formally move.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Lewis. Councillor.
Very happy to second.
Yes, thank you. Still got a couple of hands up. I'm not sure whether they're. Councillor Lawson, do you want to? Anna, do you want to speak?
My apologies, legacy hand.
Graham, Councillor Graham Thomas? No?
Apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, take the vote, please, Mr. Evans.
Okay, the vote has been launched. For those of you unable to vote, you can raise your virtual hand. Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Graham Thomas.
For.
Have I missed anybody? Has everyone been able to vote? Right, I shall close the poll. And that is the majority vote with one abstention, presiding member.
Okay, thank you. Item 15 is the capital strategy 2022-23 to 2027-28. Again, section 151, please, Ben.
In line with normal fashion in previous years, I have nothing further to add by way of technical advice on this report. These are the words that fit around the capital programmes you've already approved. So unless there are technical questions, I can see there is an indication of a hand. I have nothing further by way of officer advice to need to draw your attention to on this matter. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you, Councillor Chris Hollis.
Thank you very much, presiding member. Can I ask Mr. Smith if he could pass comment on paragraph 7, Treasury Management Strategy, under 7.2, the graph that it shows the liabilities benchmark. It shows years 2025, 26, 24, 25, 25, 26 are the liability borrowing at a maximum of £800 million, and then over the many years going on to 2038, 39, it decreases down to a level of about £500 million. Now then, is that the maximum it can borrow, or is it possible that some other future council after May, or this May need to borrow money, possibly to do other projects or to do whatever they want to do at the time? Is that figure set in stone, or is it similar to what we had in the previous medium-term financial plan, a moving feast?
Quite simply, Councillor Holly, it is the latter presumption on the basis of the capital programme as approved and on the basis of the borrowing I've done so far. At the moment, it would peak in 25-26 and you would start to be seeing net repayments, but you're absolutely right. Future councils may choose to borrow more, and if they do so, as long as they also agree increases in the overall borrowing envelopes, that can also be reflected. So it's very much like the MTFP. It sets out the position on the basis of the decisions taken so far. You will be aware of my consistent advice to council that for general funds at the moment, given the outlook for inflation, the outlook for interest rates and the outlook for settlements, it is at the peak of what I consider to be reasonable and prudent at the moment. But as the MTFP changes and the outlook changes, that may also change. So it is very much the latter point, as you've made quite rightly so, Councillor Holly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So who's moving this? Peter, are you moving it?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, very happy to formally move.
Seconded by.
I'd like to formally second, presiding member.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Take the vote, please, Mr. Brown's.
Right, the vote has been launched. For those of you unable to vote, raise your virtual hands. Councillor Bev Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Any other councillors been unable to vote? No. Councillor Evans, your hand is still up. Is there an issue or?
Chair, sorry, Chair, I'm trying to raise my hand. I haven't been able to vote. I don't know. It keeps jumping.
So
I just want to abstain.
You're abstaining?
Yes, thank you.
All that is the majority fall with a number of abstentions.
Thank you. Item 16 on the agenda is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement. Again, section 151, Officer, please.
I will be as brief as I can because this is the point of time in the evening where I've worn you down and then I hit you with this one, which is twice as long as any of the other reports. It's really technical and complicated. It's what gives me permission to act on your behalf. So it's important, but there are more important things I think you'll want to debate in due course. So the only key bits I would pull out are it's consistent with the question that Councillor Holly's just raised on the previous item, that you see a peak at the moment on the basis of where the borrowing is going with the general fund and then it being into net repayment. You are aware we've achieved very substantial general fund external debt through PWLB and achieved the lowest ever rates of borrowing by the authority, and it's been locked in and protected for the next 50 years. And equally, because I've borrowed it now, there are very strong cash balances which are able to support those very substantial revenue and capital reserves, which is what you've been debating throughout the evening, in able to deploy local firepower to be able to respond to the economic recovery. So I won't prolong it any further unless there are any specific questions. I just emphasise it is a dreadfully important document because it's a sort of technical one that can get authorities into difficulties if they get them wrong. So if there are any burning questions, I would ask you ask them, but I am appreciative that it's been a long night and there are more important matters that I'm sure you'll want to discuss in due course. So I will stop there, presiding member, by way of my technical advice. You have 3 recommendations and are asked to note the Treasury update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. No one indicated any technical questions, so can we ask somebody to move, please?
Yeah, happy to move, Chair.
And seconded?
Yeah, I'd like to second, presiding member.
Good, thank you. Take the vote, Mr. Evans, please.
Okay, the vote has been launched. For those unable to vote electronically, raise your virtual hands. Councillor Will Evans. For. Councillor Ben Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Any other councillors unable to vote? I shall close that poll. And that is the majority fall with a couple of abstentions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, item 17 is membership of committees. Straightforward. Somebody the recommendation?
Yeah, presiding member, I'd like to formally move the report, names as submitted.
Thank you, David. And seconded?
Second.
Thank you. I suppose you need to take the vote as well. Yeah.
The vote has been launched. Okay, Anyone unable to vote, raise your virtual hand. Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Any other councillors been unable to vote? I shall close that poll. And that is the majority for with one abstention.
Thanks very much. And item 18 is councillors' questions. And the first question is Mike Lewis. Any supplementaries, Mike?
I hope not.
No supplementary.
No supplements, thank you. Question 2, Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his reply. Can I just ask the Cabinet Member if he's able to confirm that with the development of Penderyn on the Copperbrook site, this will help create a much needed employment opportunities back to this part of the city? Yes, well, with Skyline and Penderyn have already indicated that they are going to increase production greatly from what was they first envisaged. So there will be many more jobs, and with Skyline, it's going to make that area of the Morvar area a major tourist attraction, along with the stadium, Skyline, Penderyn. I look forward to seeing many hundreds of jobs being created in that area. And already we're getting far more interest from other companies wishing to join that destination.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member.
Okay, thank you. Question 3, Councillor Wendy Lewis. Any supplementaries, Wendy?
No, thank you.
No, okay. Question 4, Councillor Will Thomas, Stephen Gallagher, will you?
Will's had internet issues, actually, presiding member, so he's not here.
He's not here. Okay, thank you. Question 5, Councillor Cyril Anderson. Cyril?
Yeah, you'd be glad to hear the presiding member. No further questions.
Thank you, Cyril. Question 6, Councillor Linda Tyler Lloyd. Any supplementaries, Linda? You with us? No. Question 7, Councillor Mike Lewis. Mike, any supplementaries?
I think it's Jim Burtonshaw, but no supplementaries on my behalf, presiding member.
No, okay. Thank you. Question 8, Councillor Chris Holly. Any supplementaries, Chris? You're on mute.
No, presiding member, none.
Thank you. Question 9, again, June is with us. Mike, any supplementaries?
Not on my behalf, presiding member.
Question 10, Councillor Bridget Rowlands. Bridget?
No supplementaries, no.
Thank you, Bridget. Item 11, question, Wendy Fitzgerald. Wendy?
Yes, just very briefly, Chair. I do thank the Cabinet Member for the response, and I think it's very positive that there has been significant greening in the city centre. However, I just wondered if the Cabinet Member would agree that whilst there has been great improvements in the city centre, this is not necessarily happening in some parts of Swansea, where there is really considerable destruction of green open spaces, loss of green wedge, and green heritage is being lost. That's my only comment. I am dealing with very difficult problems in my ward. We do not believe that our ward, Pentagare, is being greened.
Wendy, your question was greening of the city centre, not Pentagare ward. Anyway, question 12. Councillor Lyndon Jones, any supplementaries, Lyndon?
We're glad to hear no.
Okay, that concludes the councillors' questions. Takes us to the emergency notice of motion. Councillor Rob Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know it's been a long evening, so I won't make my comments too long this evening, but they will be short but important. I think everybody understands how abhorrent the action that's been taken by Vladimir Putin is in attacking the democratic people of Ukraine. He is clearly breaking international law. He is clearly putting lives at risk. There's been great loss of life already. I read on the news reports this evening that they're now laying siege to cities in Ukraine. It's an appalling situation that we find ourselves in the 21st century, where a dictator like Vladimir Putin can choose to send troops over the border into Ukraine with a great loss of life. Obviously, the international reaction from the international community has been quite severe. We only hope that those sanctions bite and that his money supply is cut off, and that causes him to pull back from the terrible actions that he's taken at the moment. As I said in my earlier comments, Chair, obviously we will continue to do all we can, not only to make sure that we take the right decisions to help with that isolation measures that are being done by the international community, but also we will support efforts to make sure that we provide support to those people displaced in Ukraine or in need in Ukraine, who need our help and support. And I would reiterate what I said earlier, which is that if people are looking to support, and I know many people in our communities are doing so, if they could focus their efforts on supporting efforts to provide medical supplies or to make cash donations through the registered charities, that is the most important, the most effective way that help can reach the people in Ukraine at this present time. But again, Chair, I'm very grateful for the cross-party support on this motion. I'm sure everybody will lend their support to this tonight, and we can send a clear message to Vladimir Putin that his actions are not acceptable and that we deplore what he has done. I want to draw a distinction, though, between Vladimir Putin and the Russian people, because we know that the Russian people are not able to exercise democratic votes. They are not able to control the actions of this dictator, and that they, many of them, as was seen on the news today, many of the soldiers don't even know why they're in Ukraine. Many of them were not told what they were doing. And some of those who have surrendered are clearly there without the information that this is actually an invasion. So again, I would draw that distinction. This is not a motion criticising the Russian people. They are as much victims of this. But Putin has to stop the action that he's taken and has to withdraw back into his own borders. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lewis, second.
I think it was Councillor Holly to second, Chair.
Agreed. Okay, sorry, Councillor Chris Holly to second.
Thank you, President Mayor. Thank you, Leader. When I asked the Leader about this notice of motion, the frightening thing about it was that for weeks, months beforehand, this dictator in Russia was saying, I'm not going to invade, I'm not going to do anything. Yeah, most people knew he was. Yet we beat the door, a path to his door to try and stop him. Doesn't listen to anyone, doesn't care about anyone, and doesn't care about the women and children and men who are dying in the Ukraine and even his own troops. This man only cares about himself, power and money. Well, since 5 o'clock this afternoon, we've been involved in a council meeting, a debate. Whether you like who's in power or not, this is what Ukraine are fighting for. What they are fighting for is the right to do this, the right to have a discussion, a right to make a decision, a right to tell your political leaders you're doing wrong or you're doing right. And that is what these people who are making Molotov cocktails, building barriers of tyres. This is what these people are doing. I don't think we can do any more without starting a potential nuclear war, because the man is deranged. And if he reminds me of what Hitler was like before the Second World War, when he decided he wanted to march in everywhere. And I'm just really grateful that the West has got together, Europe, America, and the rest of the world, to be fair, and have said, no, we aren't putting up with this. And I genuinely hope that at some stage, as always, wars end. But when this war ends, there has to be a finding out of the war crimes that have obviously been committed, with the way in which people have been bombed and the use of certain ammunitions. I hope everybody will support this. I'm sure they will, because those people in Ukraine are fighting for the very thing that we believe in, and that's democracy. Thank you.
Councillor Lyndon Jones. Lyndon.
Thank you, presiding member. When I woke up on the morning of the 24th of February, like many of us, and heard the news about the invasion of Ukraine, Putin had gone back on his word and once again brought war to the streets in Europe, something we thought was consigned to history books. How could Ukraine ever be a threat to Putin? But they are a threat because Putin fears one thing above all, as both Rob and Chris said tonight, and that's democracy. On the 24th of February, we went back to Europe of 1938. And if that does not get you nervous, history reminds us all what happened after September 1938. What country next? Putin has the capacity to drag us into World War III, and he has just put his country's nuclear forces on special alert. The bloodbath we now see on our television screens day by day has been created in his name. Putin said that he would not attack civilian targets. Well, he's a liar. Hundreds of civilians, innocent people, have already been killed. Putin has blood on his hands. There are other victims too. Many ordinary Russians, as Rob mentioned earlier, who do not support this war. They don't know why they're going to this war. And we saw them being rounded up on the television screens at the weekend. The bravery of the Ukrainian people is humbling and moving. And like one particular soldier, and he was hailed as a hero after sacrificing his life to blow up a bridge. The bridge was mined, but a Russian column was advancing, and there was no time to detonate it remotely. So he radioed his unit, told them he would do it manually, saying goodbye. And that is Vitaly Skirkum. And, gosh, what a thing to do. But the efforts of ordinary people, too, have taken up arms. Putin, through his invasion, would be a walkover, thought it would be a walkover, but it's not. The other thing I think we've all learned is the leadership given by the Ukrainian president. And what a great leadership he's giving in his country's darkest hour. Cometh a moment, cometh a man. Putin also never thought that the free world would come together as one with economic sanctions and more. Down to this concerted effort, we now see the ruble in freefall and the interest rate rocketing in Russia, and we are told more is to come. However, these actions have put Putin into a corner. Many people have said that Putin would never do this. Then he goes and does it. He'd never annex Crimea. He did. He'd never start a war on the Donbass. He did. He'd never launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. He has. Would never do, and that doesn't apply to Putin. And that raises a really uncomfortable question. He'd never press the nuclear button, would he? Really worrying. We live in a really uncertain time, an uncertain world, a time when many feel worried and frightened. Sadly, nobody can predict the future. To date, over 1 million people have fled the country, and as a city of sanctuary, I know that Swansea will play its part in offering a safe haven for these people. And I'm so pleased that tonight, yet again, the Guildhall is lit up in the colours of the flag of the Ukraine.
Thank you, Lyndon. Councillor Peter May.
Thank fellow group leaders for inviting me to give full cross-party support on the chamber for this motion. Like everybody else, the jaws are dropping by what this man has done. I mean, we even on our own shores a few years ago, we had the Novichok attack. Yet he lives in a parallel universe, denying he's done anything wrong, and he justifies his attack at every opportunity. We do have a couple of advantages from 1938, in which the barefaced lies of this man are telling are really exposed by coverage on social media. We didn't have that in 1938. You could actually see that the man lacks total credibility, as well as what I can only be described as the man being a murderer. The other bit of hope that we do have is the resolve of the rest of the world, and I'd like to pay tribute to people in our own city, the humanitarian effort that everybody is playing in support. We've mentioned the Guildhall, we're mentioning all the collections going on in the city. People are actually reaching out, and while we've got that, we have got, we've got hope, because let's not forget, there's one man is doing this. As the leader said, it's not the Russian people. It's one man on a, basically on a very, twisted ego trip. But our thoughts fully supporting the motion. Our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine in any way that we can do, and I'm sure that the leader will do anything that we can do to support these people who are in a desperate plight. And I just hope, like Councillor Jones has said, that it isn't the start of another country in another country. But there you have it, fully in support of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Mike Day.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. And I'm not going to rehearse all the heartbreaking stories that we've been exposed to, and seeing it on TV is one thing, but living through it must be terrible. And I think that it's important to say that there were millions of people around the world yesterday who were joining in prayer to pray for peace in Ukraine. And whilst I believe in the power of prayer, I also believe in the power of us taking action. And I note and agree with what the leader said in terms of the fact that we mustn't demonize individual Russian people. But nevertheless, we do need to take action against the Russian institutions and organizations who are supporting this particular regime. And I do welcome the comments that were made earlier on and the actions of Councillor Clive Lloyd in terms of looking at the pension scheme and ensuring that we divest as soon as possible from Russian-based businesses. But I'm just wondering whether there is something more that we could do. And one or two suggestions I've already put to some of the officers. One, for example, would be in connection with, whilst we've dealt with pensions and investment, are we sure that we're not involved with contracts that are supporting Russian businesses? I note that Suffolk County Council, for example, have cancelled a contract with Gazprom for the supply of energy. And the other suggestion I had is that whilst again recognising that the call now is for financial contributions to be made, that we have a number of groups across the city who are collecting medical aid and essentials and are finding it perhaps difficult to get that aid transported to the collection hubs in places like London. So I have asked and thankful to Martin Nichols for responding about the possibility of using some of our council vehicles to offer to some of these groups to transport these goods up to where they're needed. So I'm just hoping that in addition to our standard solidarity, our welcome that we will give to refugees who are displaced, that we can actually take some practical actions. And I've just suggested one or two further ones, which I hope that we can take. But I think, we're all hoping and praying, regardless of our faith beliefs or no beliefs, that we're hoping and praying that peace will come very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I like your backdrop. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Totally support motion. Not going to say any more on that score. Just wanted to highlight and echo the leader's comments about the Russian people. I think we have got to think about what they are also probably going through, in that they are completely innocent pawns in what this deranged individual has decided to do. And the sad thing, whilst I support the sanctions, the people who will suffer most in Russia will be those very Russian people. So my thoughts are also with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I fully agree with everything that has been said tonight. What is going on in Ukraine is something we could barely imagine that this would be happening in 2022. It's like going back in history almost. I think what is important too is being the emphasis tonight that we must not look to put the blame anywhere on the Russian people. This is down to one man, a megalomaniac, who seems to only want to push himself at the expense of everyone else. I have friends in Russia. I have had friends in Russia for many, many years, and I daren't think about what they're going through at the moment because of what their leader is doing. It is absolutely horrific. And I heard last night, and I expect to, that if you now go out and protest in Russia, you are at risk of being imprisoned for 8 years. Can you believe it? In the 21st century, this is what is going on in a so-called modern country. So I fully agree with everything that's been said. It's a terrible, terrible thing that is happening, but we must always remember the Russian people are innocent victims in some way as well.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Child. Mark.
Thank you. My daughter used to work for the Labour Party, and one of the things she did twice was go to Kiev and speak to the social democratic parties in Eastern Europe that are holding conventions there, talking about what democracy was and how political parties are organised and how you campaign in elections. And I'm sure people from other parties and whatever did the same, because these people wanted democracy. They wanted to understand how to be a modern free country in the 21st century. And now friends she made are now fleeing or fighting or hiding from this megalomaniac. It's quite the right word. My other daughter, who's never been politically active, simply shares a flat with a girl who came here from Ukraine, who is now distraught about what's happening to her family. I think this motion is, obviously I agree with it. It talks about sanctuary, talks about diplomatic action. I think we should be talking about humanitarian action of food and medicine and shelter for people. I think we should be supporting the economic sanctions against Putin's regime in Russia. And I also think we should be supporting the right and enabling the people of Ukraine to defend their country and fight for their democracy.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Councillor Alison Pugh.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. And yes, I'm more than happy to support this motion. And it is hard to believe that in 2022, one man can have such power. You know, have we not learned from what's gone before? You know, he will have aims to go into other countries, as madmen before him have also done, and those countries need to be afraid, and he has to be stopped. And you know, when you look at him, I know he's got a lot of Botox and he hasn't got the sort of motions in his face sort of thing, but he strikes me as, when I was a very young student nurse, and we had a big massive gentleman who was a psychopath, a diagnosed psychopath, and I have never seen eyes like it in my life, because there's no remorse, there's just absolutely, I can't describe. And you look in his eyes and there's no feeling, there's absolutely nothing there, and that is a dangerous man, and he has to be stopped. I just hope, you know, we are a country that takes refugees, we are a city that welcomes refugees, and I hope we don't make it difficult for people to come here. I hope we don't put the obstacles in the way that we've heard some horror stories this week at people being asked how much they earn. We need to get our priorities right, you know. The links have gone out tonight. I have sent links around to councillors, and there'll be more coming from our comms tomorrow of how to support the countries. But really happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Austin. Councillor Stewart then to respond.
Yeah, very quickly, Chair, just to address a couple of points that have been made, just to reassure Councillor Day in terms of energy supply and contracts. I know the officers have done some work on that. Just to confirm, the majority of the gas that we receive comes from the continental shelf. There's only 4% of total UK gas supply that was made up of imports that potentially could have come from Russia. Commercial procurement customers purchase their energy via the Crown Commercial Services, and the current framework supplier for gas is Total Energies and the electricity from EDF. And again, Total Energies have come out with a statement absolutely condemning what has happened with Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and has committed to taking steps to again isolate Russia from the supply chain. So action is being taken there. Obviously, what we will do is to continue to look at all the contracts that we operate, just to give ourselves that level of assurance that we are doing that. But again, I'm grateful to the officers for the work they've already done to answer that question. In terms of what Councillor Pugh said, yeah, absolutely right. I've been in conversations this week with Welsh Government and with WLGA leaders. We are a city of sanctuary, we're a nation of sanctuary, and we will do all we can to support those who need our help. I have said to colleagues in London, I do hope that the UK government does fall in line with the position of the European Union and remove the barriers that are still in place that will prevent people coming to the UK who are fleeing conflict. And we should always help refugees who need to come and stay here for a period of time whilst they're in fear of their lives. So I really do hope that UK government will move its position further on that. Outside of that, I was just going to say, look, I mean, I was looking at some of the quotes from back in 1938, and there is one there from Winston Churchill, and I think it's telling, and I hope that this advice is followed, because even though Mr. Churchill had gone through a previous war and had obviously been the defence minister or the Minister of War at the time, he, with the onset of war before them, said very clearly, it's always better to jaw than war. And I do hope that sense prevails, and that Putin brings people back to the table and sits down and tries to seek a diplomatic solution here and stops the hostilities as quickly as possible in Ukraine. And I think the saddest thing for all of us is, as I think as Chris and others said, you know, the people of Ukraine only a few weeks ago were exactly like us. They're a democratic country, living ordinary lives, doing their best to get on with what they would like to do in their own lives. And this despot, Putin, has completely crashed the country and made millions of people flee for their lives. And, you know, we have to stick to our values of democracy, of decency, and stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. And I'm grateful for the support from all members tonight for this motion.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Evans, can we take the final vote of the evening?
Thank you, presiding member.
Can we vote more than once?
We've summed up and we can't take any more.
Okay, the vote has been launched. And just raise your hand if you've got to vote, if you couldn't vote electronically. Councillor Will Evans.
For.
Councillor Beth Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Bindi Lewis.
For.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
Sorry, for.
Are there any other councillors that were unable to vote electronically? Okay, I shall look to close the poll. And that is unanimous for. Does that remember?
Yeah, well done, everyone. Yeah, okay. Thank you all. That concludes our agenda. Concludes our meeting. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye bye.
Good evening,
Right, everyone. Thanks very much.
Bye.